Well, welcome back, everyone, for the last time, at least for the first time for the last time, here for the last set of the SCC North American Championship and the qualifier for two semi-pro teams on their way to Worlds. We've already got one of them, the Hounds, just qualified themselves in a nice, clean 2-0, and we'll see whether the Sages or the Storm are going to be moving forward to join them. It's Gormizer. I got Mifflin on the desk with me, and Mifflin, you just got to watch that nice 2-0 set for the Hounds.
You too.
Well, yeah, but you were more active role in the watching. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I talked about it.
I was watching you watch the game in a way.
Were
not,
you?
Well, not. I mean, yes, but no. If
I'm thinking
watching,
there's just but no.
Well, no, because if you're watching the stream, you're watching the game, and I'm watching the game that you're watching and talking about on the stream. So in an inadvertent way, it's kind of like watching you watch.
What's this set again?
This is the Storm and the Sages.
Thank you.
Playing each other. Sages, an unfortunate 2-0 loss, as you'll see here on the bracket. Not earlier today, just now. Just happened, quite literally, about 10 minutes ago. Sages end up lose there. Storm, Mifflin, though, on the other side of that one, and this one is in case maybe you missed it, come in 2-0 the Wardens this morning. And they do it in a pretty convincing fashion. Really good team play. Delnyyy looked really good on the Guan in Game 1, then good on the Arthur in Game 2. Dame, for some reason, was allowed to have Ratatoskr 2 games in a row and looked really good on it. And so between the Sages and the Storm here, Mifflin, there's only one spot left. We've got the Group A teams. If anyone goes onto the website against myproleague.com and you look at it, you look towards the future, towards the blog on the news section, you'll see that Group A was SPL 5, which is the Titans, SPL 8, which is the Valkyries, NA 1, which we now know is the Hounds, and then EU 2 last week we found to be the Ravens. Group B is the Warriors, the Scarabs, to be determined, and then the Mambo. And so these two teams fighting, admittedly, to go into a really difficult group.
That's a tough one.
But it is going to be the only way to continue your Season 9 right now. And Mifflin, I don't even know where to start on these two teams. It feels like both of them, as a whole team, have been really, really remarkable. But unfortunately, the Sages coming off of a moment and a set, maybe leaving a slightly sour taste in our mouths in comparison to what we saw the Storm do earlier today.
But I'm sure that the Sages will be able to bounce back, because even in a set loss up against the Eldritch Hounds, there were moments, specifically in the early game of both games, where they looked very, very strong. Finding kills, rotating, getting these opportunities to take numbers advantages are the primary strengths of the Athenian Sages. Their weaknesses being that when they choose to do some of those things, even though it works out on board, doesn't necessarily amount to a lot. It's the things after the fight that I'd like to see improved for the Sages. How many Gold Furies are we grabbing? Where are the Pyromancers happening? Do you have the opportunity to push a tower? Can you rotate into these buffs and invade them given any single opportunity? If the answer is yes for the Sages, they've already got step 1 down. They've got the kills, they've got the picks, they've got the positioning. It's just that decision making which needs to see a boon. Otherwise, when you talk about the laning phase or individual performances from these players, I'm impressed top to bottom. Privative in particular has just been blanket statement incredibly good in that support role. A diverse god pool and a god pool that not many teams are willing to address. How often are you going to ban Kabrakin? Are you really concerned about the Athena enough that you want to dedicate a ban there? I'd argue no. He's got essentially very strong pocket picks that make it very, very difficult to deal with. I've really liked Shortfuse as well. The Sages are a strong team. They're just one step away, one piece of the puzzle away from really elevating to the next level.
And I think that's what we're waiting for in this set, and like you said, potentially going to see. Could be something the Storms pick on, though. If you watch what the Hounds just did in picks and bans, they could maybe try to bring some of that. The Athena, at least at most points, I think it was the second phase, each ban phase, did get taken away. And so something that the Storm could do, if you talk about Shortfuse, you talk about Privative, if I look over to the Storm, at least the direct equilateral portion for Shortfuse is going to be Dame, who was doing just absolute numbers earlier today on this Ratatoskr. And Mifflin, I think that there's a lot of work to be cut in for the Sages, because I think what we saw to the Storm this morning was a team that was playing damn good as a unit.
Yeah, I think bringing up Dame, a great topic to start with. I really liked what he was able to accomplish on the Rat. Wouldn't be surprised if both of these teams are fighting over that pick, because Shortfuse is very capable of playing it as well. just get them off their comfort selections. But when I saw Xibalba Storm, it was a team possessed. This was not just the Xibalba Storm on a good day. This was the Xibalba Storm playing to the absolute peak of what they're capable of, I think. Just clean, concise calls, overwhelming aggression, great objective play in their set as well. So whether or not they're able to maintain that momentum to be determined, but certainly coming off the back of a dub feels much better than what the Athenian Sages have had to withstand up against the Eldritch Hounds just earlier on. I think that when you talk about jungles, both of these guys very evenly matched. Dame and Shortfuse have the potential to dominate in both the early and the late game. So I want to talk about the supports for a moment, because we did briefly highlight Privative as well on the other side. Oceans has played in his last 6 games, 6 games of Maui. Have all 6 games been bangers? Have they all been ones you want to remember? Absolutely not. But as the weekend has gone on, each individual performance from Oceans has gotten significantly better and better.
Oh, for sure.
I reached out to him. I was like, man, what's going on with the Maui? Why do you keep going back towards it? You know what he told me? He said, Mifflin, I haven't had an opportunity to play the Maui just yet. I've scrimmed with them twice, so feel happy that you can at least watch me improve throughout this event. And so far, he has been. This Maui is now, at first, I thought just a straight-up detriment to the Storm. Nowadays, and in this set, might be something that the Sages have to address.
Well, we'll see. Will Oceans be picking that up? Will the Sages maybe try to take it away? Let's find out in picks and bans for game number 1. Sages will be first pick. It is interesting you say it that way, though, because you think about it. Unseen scrim number 1. Unseen scrim number 2. Game number 1. And
it was bad.
Not great. Game number 2. Well better. Still not great. Game 3. If I'm remembering, Game 3 was like 0-7, like not necessarily the kind of performance. And then something swapped between Game 3 and Game 4 of the Maui here for the Storm, because Game 4 was phenomenal, and then the 2 today were also really, really solid for him. Maybe we'll get a couple more out of them. We'll see what gets banned. Ratatoskr is taken away, though. We talked about that for Dame, the Ymir, the Hades joining that, the Vulcan. You had called for the Athena, does get banned as well, and the Morrigan alongside that. When you've got only one thing that's left open that seems like it's going to be the highest priority god left on the list, it's going to be very easy. Good for the Ishtar, although Thor notably looked over despite specifically Shortfuse having some really good games on it earlier. Storm going to scoop that one up since it's available.
Yeah, I was thinking of Yemoja as well as an incredibly strong pick.
Good one.
Feels like in the North American SCC, there's only one guy that's willing to play the Yemoja consistently, and it's Quig, and he's not in this set. And we know in the last 6 games, Oceans has played Maui, and Oceans the type of dude to hyper-fixate on selections. Will be going back towards it once more for a 7th time in a row. This time flanked by Thor, though, and I think you're right to bring him up as one of those potential first picks. This god has just been incredibly dominant. And I've been racking my brain. I'd had the opportunity to talk to some of the SPL junglers recently as well, and they said, look, Thor's in a very good spot right now. Obviously incredibly powerful, damage output certainly there, but he's not exactly consistent, and the reason they think we're seeing it in the North American SCC and the EU SCC as well so consistently is that Thor, similar to every god with a global, is very, very strong in games where you're lacking a bit in coordination. At the absolute highest tier of play, these guys are playing as close to possible with perfect information on map at all times. They know where you are, they know which camp you're working on and where you're going next. But here in the SCC, you got a little bit more leeway. Some of their pathing's a little bit more different. Makes it much more difficult to track them down, which is why we've been seeing these massive ultimates just a bit more consistently.
Well, maybe Dame is going to be able to provide a little bit. Kernanos Pele get banned out by the Storm. On the other side, it is the Scylla and the Bologna that gets taken away. Merlin gets locked in, but right before the ban phase, they also locked in the Ram, something that Zen earlier today I had one like 7-0 game on, and then the second game was 2-5 at one point, ends the game 7-5. So very, very phenomenal performances here that I expect out of the Storm. Susano does get locked in, though, Mifflin, and that has been a very problematic pick. Alongside the Freya, which is not something I expected, and it kind of changes things up. Freya, we prefer in the long lane, which means Ishtar mid, or do you think Freya has an okay matchup into the Merlin? I can't imagine that's true.
No, we're getting Freya in the duo. Control ourselves here. There's no way, even with Conduit Gem, that you're taking Freya into mid, and I think it will likely still be Conduit Gem Freya over in the duo lane. When I was looking at the Sages draft, first 4, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that is a great team fight. You've only got one weak lane right now, which is going to be your Cthulhu. Now with the Freya as well, having both side lanes likely to struggle in a post-level 5 world means that it could be pretty easy for the Storm to find wins on map, so long as the fights aren't happening in mid. And if it is Ishtar in mid, don't fight there. You've got 2 easy lanes to play through.
Well, good news is it's a final battle for the last spot going to the SWC group stages. We'll find out who can get ahead here in game number 1.
What do you say, Trelly? One more SCC cast here in Season 9 of the Smite Pro League in 2022. And it's the Sages versus the Xibalba Storm. 1 spot remaining at the Smite World Championship group stages. Both these teams very deserving. You know, the Sages, they come into this event, the 2nd North American seed. The Storm, the underdogs, your number 5 seed here in NA. Now, tumultuous games for the Sages over the last couple of sets, but they found their ways to win. But if you're talking about momentum, earlier on today, what we saw the Storm get done up against the Wardens, how convincing that was. I think you're worried about the Storm, and I think their jungler in particular going into game 1.
Yeah, no doubt. I think both of these junglers, though, on some dynamic picks, the Susano for Shortfuse and the Thor for Dame, can be deadly. A pick that we haven't seen in the duo lane too much recently has been this Freya. And it looks like I'm going to get out cleared for the time being just because, you know, Zen's been on point with the Rama and that horrific emblem that Ocean's popped. Forced out the beads there from Priv, but if this Freya's given some space and Renjaru can get online, could be deadly come about 20-25 minutes or so.
Yeah, do you think that's maybe a statement you can make for the Sages composition as a whole? I mean, they got an Ishtar in mid, so double hunter composition. You've got a Susano that'll eventually want to take these 1v1s later on in the game. Hell, you've got a Cthulhu to frontline for you. Do you think as a whole, this Sages composition is just going to age nicely come 20-25 minutes?
Yeah, for sure. And I think since the Xibalba Storm can obviously tell that that's going to happen, maybe some onus on Dame to try and get active early, but it's not like Thor doesn't always have that 100-0 potential as the game continues. And it's not like Merlin and Rama aren't going to absolutely pop off with some extra itemization online later as well. Could jump in from Oceans, gets the beats down from Renjaru, so now no beats for the Athenian Sages for at least another 100 seconds on Priv. So Dame's got some openings, maybe try and get Anvil of Dawn, Jova, but get some good damage on a Shortfuse.
Hello, and that wall is going to be really nicely placed. Dame just needs the cooldowns back. Harpy's helping out a bit, but mindset of Dame, obviously, just to steal away some back camps and not go any further forward. Blue buff is actually going to be up here in just a moment. It's a Cthulhu early on in the game. You've got Delnyyy on the tier. Now, Delnyyy has played some fantastic Smite this weekend as well. Shortfuse has been able to heal up a bit, but it's still this 1 level advantage for Dame that makes the difference. All the abilities down, and an early blue buff invade. It's good for the Xibalba Storm, and maybe expected Trelly given the matchup over in the Soul Lane, and I'll hold that thought. Looks like maybe just a little CC towards Jangaru, and actually it'll get flipped around right towards Oceans. But maybe expect Delnyyy to feel okay early in this lane against Cthulhu.
Yeah, I think just because of the pressure that Dame put onto Shortfuse at the back camps, and you look at the relic choice for Shortfuse, and it is the Blink, which means no beats. 1 wall and a Blink in from Delnyyy, a tier Fearless, would have definitely given first blood, which means Shortfuse can't walk up for blue buff, and which also means the Xibalba Storm are going to be able to invade both this time around, or in this case, invade one and confirm the other. So Delnyy's going to be sitting a little bit over Dishonored here in lane, just by nature of getting both buffs and having a little bit better clear. Tier with the Bluestone is certainly going to be out clearing Dishonored with that Tainted Steel. But Cthulhu's not really known for the early pressure, not really known for the early clear anyways. You're more so waiting until you can actually rotate in with Descent into Madness and just be a menace in these team fights of the squishier characters.
Now, I'm glad we're talking about Dame a bit early in the game. I think it's got to be a continuation conversation from our first set where it was the Ratatoskr then, but can be similar mindset here from the Thor. And it was immediately at level 5 on the Ratatoskr, immediately sent to gank, oftentimes was finding kills. Now you're level 5, you go back, you purchase a decent little power spike, maybe immediately make your way in. Now Shortfuse the same, you can scrap a bit more. Now you got Typhoon online as well. But I think you got to assess some of the options here, really, for both of these junglers here, Trelly. I mean, Joshy, of course, can flicker away, but has the beads. Jangaru with beads, but also CC immunity in the ultimate. Are there some obvious choices in your mind for either side?
Yeah, if I'm Dame, I'm definitely looking towards wherever the beads are down at the moment, but more specifically making sure Renjaru can't get online late game, right? That's always going to be a good call. If you can force out Valkyrie's discretion, you got a pretty good gank opportunity onto that Freya, but Shortfuse does go for the wraparound here, maybe trying to fight this.
Little double pull in, and chase onto Delnyyy. A Lawbringer up at the Typhoon is awaiting. Dame with some peel, but simply not enough. It is now maybe doomed himself as the chase continues. Hammer needed. Shortfuse blinks in, but the stun from Dame flips it. My goodness. He is playing on razor-thin margins. I love it from Shortfuse. Love it from Dame. Both junglers, they are active early at level 5, but it's Dame with the final laugh.
Yeah, and that's the worst thing is that Shortfuse had options, right? He blinks in, he hits the jet stream. He can choose to teleport in, he can choose to back up, teleport in later. But Dame had one call, and it's, I have to hit this stun. This man has no beads in the tower, will kill. And he was able to time that perfectly. Shortfuse getting shut down there, and Dame getting his first kill of the game. And this Thor off strong is definitely a good look. But Dishonored got the first blood on Delnyyy, which is exactly what this Cthulhu needed after losing both blue buffs that first time around.
And it's Manticore Spikes, first item for Delnyyy. Pythag's piece early for Dishonored. So maybe expected build for this Cthulhu, and good looks early on for Delnyyy. Now it's return ganks possible, but blink on one side, teleport on the other, so it's going to start scaling up. Those ultimates are going to start really changing things up over in the solo lane. I think it's got to be some emphasis, I agree with you, Trelly, from Dame over towards left, because Freya eventually, especially Freya plus Ishtar, individually get ridiculous on their own later on in the game, but those two can just absolutely melt. For now, Shortfuse looking towards Oceans, who's back on the Maui, and Zen, who's back on the Rama, and how about a double pull into a double stun? The Storm have picked up right where they left off earlier on today. And these three picks in conjunction, it was a rat instead of a Thor, but the same mindset in the Storm's 2-0 to start the day funnels itself in here into game one.
Yeah, I can tell that because Priv had River's Rebuke, Shortfuse felt real safe going for that play, but Ocean said, nope, you're not allowed to hide in the rivers, and was able to hit a massive two-man landfall and just pulled them away from the rivers, and also just good follow-up. I thought maybe that Zen was going to be in some trouble after dashing to grab that invade.
Yep.
But just some great positioning, a good mystical Alua from Ocean to get him a little bit out of trouble, and also using that ultimate to CC immune the pull in from Shortfuse, made sure he could stall for his team, hit some great snipes, and pick up the double kill. This time, one kill for Zen, and another one going the way of Dame. This Thor feeling pretty good early on.
Oceans will send a hook to Renjaru. He's got to swing away, actually. Decent little chunk from the Freya. Got Ring of Hecate online. Now look, Myth earlier on this weekend, he used the friend card with Oceans. Him and Oceans, good friends with one another. Right, I was trying to figure out a way to say that again without saying the word friends.
Our
twice.
pals.
They're pals,
Buddies.
they're buddies, right. And he felt like he was allowed to, tell Oceans that his Maui wasn't good.
Yeah.
It didn't start the weekend off and, all that great. But I really do think over the last few sets, this has become one of the most important picks for the Xibalba Storm. It has looked fantastic when Undying in a couple of the games that we've seen him play it recently. And the double island pulls, triple island pulls at times have just set up so wonderfully. But again, the follow-up so important in moments like that, and the Storm have gotten it. And so yet again, it is a fast start for Dame, 1 kill away from the killing spree, and an Anvil of Dawn ready to go. A 2-level lead for InMyZen. So you've kept Renjaru behind, and you've given Zen a great platform. Now a Gold Fury begins to get burnt. You have a Merlin, not the best secure, not much big burst, plenty of burn, but maybe smart to drop it when the Sages poke their head around the corner.
Yeah, didn't quite have the stance switch there from Joshy already, or just didn't want to use it. Probably fearing the grouping around that objective. And as you said, not too much burst to confirm means better off not really going for that 50-50. Delnyyy is in a little bit of trouble, getting body blocked. Has to law bring her out, but it looks like no more chase will come through from this tier. Don't want to expend any more ultimates, but Dame going up to the sky. Wants the 1v1 versus Shortfuse. He knows he's on back camp. Can he land it? No.
It is the Harpies, though, that are feeling the pressure of the Anvil of Dawn. Does not finish the big Harpy. Liked his odds there because it's a 2-level lead for Dame as well. Shortfuse didn't get the pull. The beads were on time from Dame. Maybe a 2-level deficit gets swept aside a bit when you've got an ultimate. And the guy on the other side of the fight does not. So again, now Shortfuse a couple of times now has made the aggressive jump in. Didn't work out first time over in solo lane. Now just forcing the beads off of Dame. So the jungle matchup already getting a bit spicy here between the Athenian Sages and the Xibalba Storm. Remember, the weight of this matchup really at a peak for both of these teams. It has been a long year of SCC games, 3 total phases, promotions, relegations, things like that. They've survived it all. And now it's either you move on and you get to play in group stages, a whole further commitment. It's not like one more game. You get a whole new weekend of games to play and a chance to go to Worlds. Or your year is done. And you got to bring it when the weight is about that heavy. So early on here, you're happy with what the Storm have done, but the Sages have been able to weather the Storm a little bit. That's not bad by me. Well, 2,000 gold lead is built up, and the Storm feeling good here in the first 11 minutes.
Certainly are. And I was wondering when the objectives would start to be looked at, and the Sages look like they've got an opportunity to go for this Pyromancer. Now that the Storm know exactly where the Sages are, looks like they're heading towards the gold for it, but do you feel confident going for it? I mean, Zen's got good damage with the Shadow Steel Shuriken, but you're not critting every auto, which means your DPS is not the fastest. And Dame does not quite have Anvil of Dawn up yet. Would be a great tool to try and deter anyone from walking into this objective, or trying to force out some more relics. You got 3 beads available, and if Shortfuse is not there, you're not really just ulting in 4 beads at this point because you're not too tanky. So now, Gold Fury gets started up, and Priv already here has perfect vision on this.
This time looks like a real commitment. Priv uses River's Rebuke, and the Storm get the Gold Fury, and another one on the Privative. It's 2 very important kills, a neutral objective and a support, and a big gold spike. This is where we've seen the Storm in the last few sets really extend out their leads. My goodness, Shortfuse nearly one shot by Dame, who makes it into the Anvil of Dawn. And Dame with a sliver of HP, a pixel. No chance for the dive any further. Good damage back from Jangaru and Shortfuse to prevent the execute. But it's been Fury fights all day long from the Xibalba Storm that have won them their matchups, given them early leads. Now it's Fury kill in mid lane tier 1. A big win for the Xibalba Storm.
And that puts them ahead about 3,000 gold at this point, and the Storm are not stopping now. They're able to send out a mid Trebuchet and grab that tier 1 tower in mid as well. So good fight back though. I mean, Dame does huge damage to Shortfuse because there's no beads online. So as long as you're hitting that wall, you're pretty much guaranteed 70% of that Susano's HP, assuming you feel safe enough to teleport in. But right when Dame did, got turned around on by Jangaru, plenty of damage, got up into the sky. And I'm saying, if Dame's not on a killing spree, probably goes for that dive underneath the tower just because, you know, show some dominance against the enemy jungler, but giving that shutdown gold, certainly not worth it. So pretty smart to save that 3-0 bounty. Just go back and live to fight another day. At level 12, going into the hi-rez Lament, that's going to help out this Thor with that 100-0 burst potential, weaving in those auto attack cancels every single ability. Does start to add up with a 2-level in the jungle. You got to imagine Shortfuse is looking elsewhere to try and find his engagements.
Yeah, just tier 2 item behind, and the tier 2, well, he's got the full Hydras, but the added bonus of the tier 2 Hydras for Dame. Absolutely very strong. Dual lane under a bit of pressure here on the Sages side of the map. A purple buff is up. A rare miss from Oceans on the island pull, and that'll be a Riptide away from Privative, and a secured purple buff. Now that's split 4 ways, so it's, you know, it's less about what the Storm are able to get and more about denying it from Renjaru. That's the question we brought up a couple times, though. Keeping this Freya behind. How far behind does the Freya need to be for the Storm to feel comfortable? 2 levels down has kind of been the status now, but 2 ring items in. Starting to get there, Renjaru, one way or another. Hasn't died a whole lot, has at least been able to stay in lane. You are behind Zen, but still stacking those rings.
Yeah, once you get that hasten ring, you really are able to run down some of these tankier targets, and especially when boxing matches. It's all about if Zen's able to return damage, though, because the way that this Rama is itemized means as long as you're both hitting auto attacks, Zen is just winning. You've got Executioner, you've got the Shadow Steel, you're dealing with a little bit of that healing as well as just good crit damage every once in a while, so Zen should be winning those 1v1s handily. But the key to Freya has always been how much can you juke with that movement speed of Haste and Ring. You just run back and forth, hopefully you're sidestepping auto attacks, and you hit yours with these because they have some AoE, they're pretty large. You can hit them with the minions unless you proc your first ability. There's a lot that Freya has to offer in the early. But down 3 levels to a Rama means Renjaru's probably trying to play as safe as possible. You can see the ward vision from the Sages over on the left side of the map. This Freya wants to know exactly when someone's rolling up, and especially if it's going to be a Thor ultimate, because Valkyrie's Discretion can't get you the whole way to your tower, not from that far up.
Yep, it's been Zen all weekend long, alongside Dame. Been great plays from all the Xibalba Storm, but really Zen, you know, not only from ahead in lane. This is a great position for Zen to be in, but earlier today, Gore and I saw Zen at like 1 and 3, 1 and 4 in lane, and still find a way to carry damage later on in team fights. Pure mechanical skill, and the Ram is synergized quite well. Now Dame back with the Anvil of Dawn. Looking for Renjaru, forces the Valkyrie's Discretion. Snipes from Zen, don't finish off Shortfuse, who's here for the counter gank. Renjaru, first kill of the game for the Freya. And InMyZen doesn't have much defense left. Oceans will not get in range to pull anyone back. Fantastic timing on the counter gank from Shortfuse. Jangaru hoping to secure the purple, but still maybe a bit too risky.
Yeah, and that was through both relics there from Dame. Good ultimate, but timed perfectly. Renjaru knew exactly when it was coming, was able to go up into the sky. Shortfuse also blinked in, caught Dame in the Typhoon, and there's just a lot of damage to be had afterwards. Renjaru was able to find the auto attacks and get their first kill of the game, giving the Sages their second kill as well. Gold still certainly in favor of the Storm, but getting that shutdown gold and getting it onto your Freya.
Yep.
Got to be pretty happy about that one. Getting some extra itemization online, just fast track to that Telekind's ring. Once that happens, that's when Freya really does start to become a threat. And since Oni Fury is available and the Xibalba Storm, I was going to say, have some pressure on the left side of the map, they were looking to maybe pull. I think the Sages need to get some ward vision down at the very least, though. Giving up that objective for free doesn't seem like a smart call. That Oni Fury could be massive here. It could be a big swing for either one of these teams.
I wonder if Joshy, prepping for a team fight here soon, picks up Soul Reaver. That'll help out with Dishonored and the Cthulhu. All that health damage. Pretty, you know, more Soul Reaver. Like it. 4th, 5th item, you get it 3rd here. And so percent pen with the Charon's coin, Soul Reaver, flat pen, a little anti-heal as well. Merlin, one of the best applicators of the Divine Ruin, so in a really good spot out of mid as well. As the Ishtar continues to scale up nicely on the other side of things. And a kin size. So, you know, really, Trelly, between Soul Reaver and kin size and 2 great applicators of those types of damage, I wonder if Dishonored could be hurting a bit in this next team fight.
Yeah, this Cthulhu is stacking a fair bit of HP, but also has double fizz protection, at least building into it. Has the breastplate, I'm assuming, wants to get something like the Contagion or even the Spectral Armor to deal with the crits that come from InMyZen. But that Oni Fury is started up, and it's going down fast. Look at the Stormer committing to it.
Wow, Dishonored blinks over the island, and yes, the health bar melts. It's Oceans with the killing blow, but Renjaru around the mid lane wall is able to counter-flank the Xibalba Storm. Joshy, with barely any HP left, takes down Shortfuse. Right now, the Storm feeling fine as the Valkyrie's Discretion times out. Dame takes the hammer, and it's a brawl that Renjaru wins. The Freya's arrived, despite a level discrepancy in lane, but cannot go back in. Both of the carries so low for the Athenian Sages.
I love a challenge.
And those kills escaping are the undoing of the Xibalba Storm.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Dame lost that. I mean, it was just the nature of attack speed, right? Big damage coming from the Thor. The Hydra's procs were great, but when you're out of abilities, you're just going to go to the enemy with more attack speed, and in this case, Renjaru. Just attacked quicker, 3 kills online for the Freya. Could have been worse, though. Seemed like there was a lot of low health targets, and actually Joshy able to catch Renjaru on the lazy back, chasing him down. Means that there's going to be a little bit extra respawn timer here for the Sages. I'm wondering if the Storm used that to head towards the Oni Fury. That's what it looks like, you can tell. Zen's already there, and the rest of the team merging in. I would assume Sage's call is, hey, go immediately to that Pyromancer and just get our consolation prize, because without Renjaru, without our 3-0 Freya, 3-1 now, probably not looking to defend this one.
Yeah, luckily at this point in the game, the Oni Fury is not going to break your side of the map or anything like that. It's only the tier 1 tower down in mid. Whoa, Dame and Delnyyy have gone in. Is it even a consolation prize for the Athenian Sages? They far from have confirmed the Pyro, and Dishonored is under some pressure as well. There'll be a jet stream out, Lawbringer in. Dame helping chase down Jangaru, and the healing from Privative is big. One more pull in the back pocket of Oceans, and it's another for the Xibalba Storm. So the Sages don't even get the Pyromancer, and they might now even lose the Fire Giant, as the Xibalba Storm have picked off the mid laner and now pull the big objective. There is a collapse inward from the Sages, half HP on the Fire Giant. It's a good stun on the wall from Dame. Privative with it all to do will step forward but will not steal away the FG. And it's gone to the Xibalba Storm with all the momentum.
Yeah, now they're able to get the Pyromancer as well and go on for a full-on retreat. Great peace of mind there. I mean, Dave knew, hey, they're probably on Pyromancer. I'm going to go up into the sky, see how much I can stall this out. The Storm were able to do just that. Jangaru falls back in, or I guess was pulled back in by Oceans. Didn't have any relics and still does it. So that Ishtar was absolutely gone after the landfall. And once you get a pick like that, got to feel pretty good about going for the Fire Giant, essentially uncontested. I think Delnyyy did a fantastic job of just zoning and making sure that no one from the Sages could even get close, except for Priv. And unfortunately for Priv, Yemoja doesn't do too much to try and steal that one, not without at least an ultimate being dropped. So the Xibalba Storm get Fire Giant on all 5, and have plenty of towers to go through. Still 2 tier 1s, and all tier 2s available. Got to imagine the left side of the map is where the team will group and try and play through their level 20 Rama, who already has that kin size online, working towards an Odibo. Plenty of shred built in for this Rama so far.
Yep, indeed. And Titan's Bane for Dame. Burst damage out of your jungler. It's what he's liked all day long. Again, we've talked plenty about the Ratatoskr. It was that style of build on Rat. Sticking with it here with Thor, of course. Lots of gold to be infused back for the Xibalba Storm, who have broken game number 1 wide open, playing with all the momentum now against the Athenian Sages. Actually, Privative hoping to fight. It's a big defensive ultimate now down as Privative slightly catches out Oceans, who simply swings away. Delnyyy considering an initiation. Instead, it's Oceans that starts us off. Delnyyy shoves back Shortfuse. Remember, the Tyr versus Susano matchup feels great for Tyr and continues to do so. InMyZen and Dame go 1-1, and snipes from Zen add to his tally. The Xibalba Storm have broken the base, and now maybe the backs of the Athenian Sages. Delnyyy will continue to zone while a Phoenix still stands. The Storm will go back and deal with that.
Yeah, still 2 carries to go through, so I imagine the Storm want to get this Phoenix and get out. Maybe the Titan was on the mind for a bit, but we're not able to find any more picks.
Still is.
Looks like they are committing to this. No beads ready. They can get a pick here. This could be it.
Renjaru, you've got 3.5 rings, but not going to help out now. It's Jangaru who's jumped on. It's the Xibalba Storm out of nowhere. Have decided the Athenian Sages. The Titan burning a bit slow. 2 seconds on the respawn for Privative, and Priv won't have the damage. How about that from the Storm? That's how you start a set. And the Storm will go up 1-0.
And it just seems like this core of letting InMyZen get the Rama, putting Dame on anything with some good pressure. And surprised I'm going to say it, but Oceans on the Maui has been popping up. These ultimates have been setting up so much where it looks like the Sages are in a good position, but the second that landfall comes through, the whole fight turns on its head.
See, this is now difficult for the Sages, where the Ram, the Maui, and any type of semi-global ult jungler for Dame, that kind of core 3 has been unstoppable so far today. There's been no answers from the Wardens. Now that continues to the Sages set. So if you're discussing picks and bans, you've got a whole category of junglers you have to consider.
Yep.
You've got a support and an AD carry that seemed too strong for both Oceans and InMyZen. Lots to figure out for the Sages if they want their Season 9 to continue. We'll see how the draft strategy changes up in Game 2 right after this.
while the Storm take game 1 by storm and just seem to surge over the Sages. I can tell in your eyes that you did not like that one that much.
You want the truth?
You weren't listening.
I didn't hear a thing you said.
You know what? I'll take it. Even honestly, it's better than hearing that was a bad pun. But if you want something that's not bad and will actually make you feel probably better and undo the harm that I've done out there, then you can go in game right now and get yourself a digital loot pack. Of course, coming with the Atlantis Leviathans, Gilgamesh, as well as quite a few other skins on sale now. I got mine a while ago. If you haven't got this yet, got to step up. In-game, get the cosmetics. Actually, that Leviathan skin is phenomenal as well. The rest of them are all really, really good, but gotta give the special shout-outs.
We know why we're buying the pack.
To the Leviathans. Yeah, there's a reason he's the biggest thing on the screen, and it's just because it's just that clean. Of course, all the skins are really good. And now, see, you've already forgotten that bad pun I made, and that's just from hearing about it. Imagine how you'll feel when you're playing as it. We got Mifflin on the desk again, and Mifflin, the Storm just fights a little better. You hear Trelly at the very end of the cast. The Maui, again, on this trajectory. It's just been exponential growth for Oceans on it. Feels like something that the Sages just did not expect.
Yeah, I would argue, though, that this is not a game that was decided by what we had talked about on the initial desk, where maybe one of these side lanes would really struggle for the Sages, or the late game scaling of one of these team fight compositions. This was a game, at least in my mind, that was decided by one too many picks. And the picks did come off the back of great pools from Oceans, but you find the free one on a Jangaru just before the Fire Giant. Until then, the game was largely pretty even. A 5-on-5 engagement at that Fire could have gone either way, but because your mid laner got picked going into the fight, Fire does go over the Storm absolutely for free. Immediately afterward, it's a tier 2 attempted defense from the Sages, where I'm thinking to myself, surely it's not a hard defense here, right? Surely we're going to back up and play around the Phoenix. Not the case. 2 die before the Phoenix defense even starts, and from there, the Sages just get rolled over, essentially.
Yeah.
Storm were able to just win out cleanly. There was never really a true 5-stack defense in an opportune position, be it neutral objective or permanent structure, Phoenix or otherwise, that the Sages were in position for, were all together for. And that's why the game ended so quickly. It felt like all the way up until that 18-minute mark, nearly dead even, maybe about 2,000 gold separating these two squads. Immediately afterward, the Sages fell apart.
Some good slash lines, 4-0 and 5 there for Zen, this Ram. I'm going to look it up once this is all over, because it has to be absolutely ridiculous what Zen's slash line, specifically on this god as well, has been throughout the weekend. Good one looking there for Dame as well. 18,000 damage, highest in the game coming out from the Ram, though. You have to imagine the Storm, one, feeling pretty good, going back to a lot of the picks we've seen them favor. The other side, the Sages, probably trying to figure out where things went wrong. And you know, Mifflin, if you look down at, you've got the Cthulhu, the Susano, the Ishtar, the Yemoja. Those 4 feel solid. It's that Freya, I think, that kind of threw things for a loop, putting the Ishtar in mid, because you had kind of mentioned, like, okay, cool, just don't fight there, things like that. Suddenly really, I think, shaking up things for the Sages, and not necessarily in a good way. So some changes that are maybe going to be necessary for them when we go into game number 2. But do you think, like, is there a world where that Freya turns things around? I mean, you said it was even at 18 minutes. If they get that Phoenix defense, does it feel a little better?
Once you've made it past the 15, 16-minute mark, I don't think you can even look at the Freya and say, all right, that's a detriment. And we've had Zatman go on record at saying the early game for Freya, not as weak as it once was, generally has the opportunity to fight back in. I'm remembering the first Gold Fury dance where Freya finds a pick, Thor dives in, and she 1v1s the Thor as well. I think that saying anything about the Freya might be a bit of an overstep on our part.
All right, in that case, maybe they can go back to it, maybe not. We'll have to see how that one does. Like you said, I guess it is really just the way you phrase it, which is that they just fell apart like 18 minutes in.
I think so.
Things were going really well, and then they stopped. And we'll see if they can maybe hold that together a little bit more. What kind of bans they will go for is maybe the big changer here. Ymir and the Ratatoskr. So already a change being picked up by the Sages, one that I'm a fan of, just because trying to control Dame feels like a big idea. But I might be a bigger fan of this one. You had mentioned it. If Oceans is going to play a pick, he's going to hyper-fixate on it. They get rid of the Maui that caused so much trouble through that one, and they first pick the Thor this time here for the Sages. making it a lot more, maybe not awkward for the Storm, but at least getting Shortfuse onto something a little stronger.
A pick that Shortfuse is very comfortable with and one that he's gone toward consistently this weekend, has looked very strong on it, and one that could dictate the pace of the early game. So I think Thor, a phenomenal selection. The Maui ban as well, I think smart, because for 7 games in a row, Oceans has only played this pick. Might be a bit difficult for the Storm to reacclimate to standard Guardians. Khepri, I don't think amongst the column of standard, having that Scarab's Blessing available to you means that it really facilitates any style of play that you want. I think Khepri is the most plug-and-play Guardian in Smite. No matter what, Scarab's Blessing is a good tool. If you're using it for self-peel, or using it to peel out your own backline, or facilitating dive into the enemy backline, it just makes it so difficult to figure out where to put your aggression. Is the guy hitting me the one I want to deal with? Well, he's death immune right now. Do I hit back? He's faster than me. I can't run away from him either. Just such a strong tool, as well as a pretty standard initiator, and one that Oceans has played a good deal throughout the regular phase.
But like you said, still a change of pace for the team. And so that'll be interesting. Although you've got a pretty good squad around you. Ishtar, Hades, locked in for the top 3. Other side, Thor, Yemoja, Ram, personally having trouble trying to find any issues in that top 3 for the Sages. Banned out Pele and Yu Huang, taken away by the Storm. Other side is the Merlin and the Susano. An immediate lock-in here for Dame, presumably, into the jungle. The Lancelot that we've been seeing. And mostly Mythland, we've been seeing it out of Oath this weekend. It has been very kind to the Hounds. With the rest of this draft, do you think it's going to be kind to the Storm?
I like how it fits into the Storm's draft for sure. You've already got the cripple from Ishtar, so having a massive cripple field along with it means that some of the mobility of the Sages will be a good deal limited. Amaterasu, Ram, Thor, all really hampered by the inability to use some of their mobility, as well as you've got team fight presence elsewhere. Your jungler doesn't necessarily need to be the core of your CC. One of the primary weaknesses of Lancelot is that he's not locking you down entirely on his own. For the most part, it's the slow from the Spectral Horse or the Grand Joust. Given the proper opportunity, you could even root with that second ability on horseback, but it's not the same as a ranged stun from Thor, or even stun initiation, or things along those lines. But because you've got the Hades with a 2-second fear, or the abduct, or the ranged initiation of an Ishtar, or even Sikkim to start a fight from a range, I think that means that having your jungler lean all in on the damage archetype is just fine, and one that I expect Dame to be able to play very well.
Well, the Sages close out their draft with a Morgan Le Fay. It's do or die for the Sages. Let's see if they can bounce back.
They sure do, Gormizer. That Morgan Le Fay locked in for the Athenian Sages. One of my favorite picks in the game, Troy.
Oh, yeah.
Love me some Morgan Le Fay. Now, it's like an actual pick. It hasn't, gone crazy in any of the matches that we've had.
She's got 100% win rate, though. 1 game.
Yeah, okay, so let me rephrase. In any of the metas that we've had here over the last couple months, she hasn't really been in it. But,
not highly contested, but I think a little bit slept on, because great self-peel, especially with a pick like Lancelot that wants to get close, wants to close gap. Morgan Le Fay has tons of CC built into the kit, as well as just whenever a team is grouped up in small corridors, I think great amounts of pop-off to be had for a Morgan Le Fay as well. So I'm excited to see what Jangaru can do, but more specifically the Thor going over to Shortfuse this time. This is a pick that he has absolutely loved throughout the entirety of this tournament. We were asking for some different picks from the Storm, or I guess in this case being forced into different picks. And I'm not seeing Zen on Rama, I'm not seeing Dame on Thor, and I'm not seeing Oceans on Maui, so it looks like the Sages played these picks and bans a little bit differently.
I would say I'm least concerned about the Ram to Ishtar pivot. I think Ishtar for Zen has been just about as top-notch as anyone else here this weekend. But it is a total playstyle shift for Oceans and a total playstyle shift for Dame. Now, you still want to get aggressive, still want a W key on the Lancelot, but obviously happens in a slightly different way. Really, for Oceans, it's going to be a lot about those Scarab's Blessings and providing second chances for their team. Takes a lot of damage. It's got to dash away there. But, we've talked a lot about Dame, level 5, when he's got those semi-global ultimates. Do you think the power curve remains the same, playing something like the Lancelot?
It's definitely you still get active at level 5, or you still have that opportunity to, but you have to be looking towards the skies for sure. I think Thor has a decent matchup into the Lancelot. Forcing out the beads early, though, puts Oceans in an awkward spot. Doesn't have the abduct, but will be just fine after using that shell. But at least you get the beats down for Renjaru, which means Dame could come over at level 5. Maybe look for an opportunity to kill this Rama. Try and get first blood, something like that. But you know that Shortfuse is looking for the same thing, or maybe just another pull onto this Rama. The aggression is not going to stop.
I can't believe Renjaru stepped up again. That was a simple dash forward and abduct from Oceans. And just a couple auto attacks away from giving a first blood over to the Xibalba Storm. I mean, I'll recontextualize it for the Sages here. If you lose this, your Season 9 is over. You need to win 2 straight to save your year and move on to the Smite World Championship group stage. The Storm just need 1 out of the next 2, if we even need to get there. So risky for Renjaru. Now we've seen Renjaru, Jangaru, the 1-2 punch of carries. Been great for the Sages, helped them secure 2nd seed in North America. But held in check by the Xibalba Storm in game number 1. We were wondering, you know, that it was not only Double Hunter, but Freya, which takes a little bit of time to get there. No, it was slightly spearheaded of an approach, I guess, from Dame really towards Renjaru on the Freya, but left in check. More just XP falling behind a Zen and the great farming there. Just didn't scale up, and that game was over at the drop of a hat in game 1. Just sudden deicide and GG at the 22-minute mark. Talked a bit about the Soul Laners in game 1 between the Tyr and the Cthulhu trailer, but now you've got an Amaterasu. But they're on the other side of the map from this. That's a gank from Dame, and Priv never ended up taking the Riptide, or didn't fly all the way through. Maybe wishing he did, because that's first blood over to Dame. An awkward first blood, but first blood nonetheless.
And that's going to make sure that Dame can get active once again. Remember, the beats from Renjaru still down for another 50 seconds or so. Oh, maybe looking to find something else versus Shortfuse, just hiding around the wall, seeing if the hammer will get committed. Doesn't look like it's going to happen, but oracles are being looked at, so maybe a bit of a skirmish. But again, with hammer being down, there's no way Dame wants to fight. And splitting those oracles means that neither team ends up getting the vision. I'm excited to see what Joshy can do on the Scylla. I mean, this is a pick we already talked about, the Morgan Le Fay. This is a pick that Joshy's been going to every once in a while in this tournament. Mixed success, but even from behind has been able to find some pretty clutch I'm a monsters.
What?
And through beads. Joshy's gone.
And he had I'm a monster. No point in really using it. You're slowing down your escape there a moment, I suppose, but Shortfuse with Anvil of Dawn had all of the gap closed. So Joshy falls prey to the Thor. In another wrinkle now in this jungler matchup. Game 1 felt dominated by Dame. But it's Thor for Shortfuse now, trying to answer back what Dame did in game 1. And this is a great start, making some headway in that department. And the wall up from Shortfuse actually keeps Dame at bay just a little bit longer. So, kill on board for both of these junglers here, Trelly. Jotun's on one side, Brawler's beat stick on the other. Dame really hoping, I guess, to limit some of the healing that Dishonored and Priv are going to be doing early in this game.
Yeah, would be a good idea, especially when there's a Yemoja on the map. That's going to start to stack up, and that does get a bit annoying. But playing this one definitely a little bit slower. I mean, not for lack of trying. It seemed like Dame has been trying to force fights whenever possible. And Shortfuse, I'm still amazed. I mean, Joshy had the beads, got the Sentinel down, but was not able to teleport.
Doesn't happen often.
Yeah, there was just so much damage coming from that double tap. I guess in this case, didn't even hit the second one. It was just the first hit and some auto attacks and the Anvil of Dawn landing. So now Joshy's going to have to be looking for those skies more often without the beats down. Got the time I'm a monster and not get 100-0'd by that Thor combo. But it's still early days. I mean, this Gold Fury is available, but neither one of these teams want to look towards it yet. Pyromancer's not up. It's just look towards your buff invades for the time being and keep track of those relic timers. Joshy beats down for another minute, and it looks like Priv's beats will come back up in 10 seconds. So besides that, both of these teams trying to force out something so they can get aggressive.
Right, and you know, you're only in the first 6 minutes of the game, but you can, I think you can already tell just by play on map, not even kills that have or haven't happened yet, but just by play on map, how this feels a bit different for the Xibalba Storm. We haven't seen Oceans just even right at level 5 getting these big pulls like he was on the Maui. Obviously, it's a bit different on the Khepri, but the pacing from past Xibalba Storm's games feels a bit different. But nothing really to be drawn between these two teams just yet. More of a feeling than anything concrete on map. Now the solo lane matchup I was kind of hinting at a moment ago, and again might get interrupted by a jungle gank. Shortfuse with Anvil of Dawn makes their way into the left, but will end up sending it forward. But it's a Hades for Delnyyy, and Delnyyy has been playing a lot of the Warriors, King Arthur, Tears. But this time ends up grabbing the Hades. Of course, you still want to go forward and provide some lockdown, but also a big mindset shift in the draft for the solo lane here for the Storm.
Yeah, you definitely are playing the Hades a little bit different than you would a Tier. Tier, you can kind of go in whenever you want. You can just be as annoying as possible. But as a Hades, you gotta look for relics being down, or you're in the mindset of forcing. So you'll blink in, get a Pillar of Agony, you know, get some dashes down, maybe the Beats or Morgan Le Fay are forcing an ultimate, and the chase down. You hope Dame can clean up. In this case, Hades going with the Book of Thoth build. It's gonna take a bit before you actually feel comfortable rotating out, and you should be getting pressure over an Ama as is. So maybe forcing out some camps as well, invading. Things like this, making Shortfuse's life a little bit annoying. And that does start to add up when Hades gets a lead and is able to rotate out. And maybe go over towards Pyromancer when it spawns in 2 minutes, those sort of things. InMyZen, though, could be caught out by a River's Rebuke if not played properly, and actually uses it a different way.
Ult out from Zen. Snipes from Renjaru. And actually played pretty well there from InMyZen. Renjaru goes up. And that allows InMyZen to wiggle away from the River's Rebuke. I gotta admit, though, I'm so used to seeing Zen on the Ram that when the snipes happened, I was wondering, like my wires got all crossed. I was wondering how Zen was suddenly sniping because he was on the Ishtar a second ago. I'm just so used to seeing the Ram on the Xibalba Storm. Gotta keep your eyes on the snipes from Renjaru this game. Not from InMyZen, but every so often in lane, we'll just see that Ishtar ult spent out for a little CC immunity. And played effectively from InMyZen here in the first couple of minutes. Does cede a little bit of pressure over, though, to the Athenian Sages, who are eyeing the purple buff. Priv and Shortfuse on the left side of the jungle as well. Sentinels away from Joshy. Dame needs the bailout from his support and the Grand Joust. Used both. And that'll secure the life of Dame for the time being, but the purple buff still very much under contest. It'll get secured by the Sages this time, so invade good. And a couple big ultimates down from both teams. More a mental win for the Sages.
Yeah, getting that purple buff nice, and also making sure Dame knows that there is a bit of damage on the side of the Sages. So even though that was a good Scarab's Blessing, had to use that Grand Joust to escape. A little bit unfortunate there, but not going to be the end of the world. Suppressing the stun as well from Shortfuse, making sure, hey, we don't want a 50-50 this buff, so good wall, stun both. I was able to confirm that purple buff for the team and give Renjaru a little bit of extra buff control.
Can we talk about how ridiculous of a word shillelagh is? Can you hover that for me, Doug?
Yeah, shillelagh, shillelagh.
Look at how crazy of a word that is. Shillelagh, it almost looks like shillelagh laugh.
Yep.
I don't know why.
No,
I saw it get picked up, and you know we have the item purchase thing pop up.
Yep.
It's one of those things, like you see it so often, and you just kind of mentally gloss over it. Now that I'm really looking at it and saying it over and over and over again.
When it first came out, I did the same thing. And I remember saying, like, what? Because Blackthorn Hammer got introduced, and I was like, oh, what's the tier 2? And I said, shalalach, you know, whatever.
Yeah, right.
And then my friend,
you gotta learn how to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's shillelagh, buddy. And I was like, okay, well, now I know, and I'll never make that mistake again. It is a strange item, though.
The naming for sure. Luckily, we don't have to say it much longer. Sledge. And Sledge actually, jokes aside, bit aside, Sledge has actually started to come back in popularity a little bit here, Trelly. The bruisery kind of hybrid early damage, early bruiser jungle build has made its way back in. Shortfuse just got plenty of damage though, but so does Dame despite the Sledge. That's this early Scarab's Blessing from Oceans. You hope you don't need that on the end of this fight, but gank, counter, gank. Shortfuse kill, but Shortfuse death. And Dame, the jungler, left standing.
And Dame is able to continue farming, whereas Shortfuse dies in that situation, but still able to trade some kills, and InMyZen goes down in the meantime. Didn't think it would net anything else. With ADC down, it's hard to go for a Gold Fury in that situation, and it didn't really seem like the Sages were in a position to get aggressive either. So we're going to call that a double down. Tied up 2-2 with a little bit of gold in favor of the Sages so far. And XP also looking relatively similar, just about 1,000 in favor of the Sages. So that does start to add up duo lane-wise. You got a level lead in for Oceans over Priv, but Renjaru is also up a level over InMyZen after not dying there and being able to clear out that wave. So that's not too bad. It's not going to happen too much. It's just once these objective fights actually roll out and you see some 5v5s, you'd like to have both relics available, whereas both junglers at the moment sitting at level 9 don't have access to beads or blink, whichever one they would like to go through. And you'd think Shortfuse probably wanting an Aegis when you're up against a Scylla.
I think the win for the Sages right now is the fact that this game hasn't gotten out of control, that Dame isn't already running the jungle and running the gank. Shortfuse is asked just as many questions as Dame this game. And so regardless of the outcome, the game isn't sideways by 12 minutes in the way that Storm matches have been earlier on today. So call it a win that we're still under contest as of now. And remember, it's crazy to be saying that about the 5th-seeded Xibalba Storm and the 2nd-seeded Athenian Sages, that it's a win for the Sages, that this match has been kept in check up to this point. Could be a rotation in here towards the Pyromancer. Ocean's eyeing it, but looks like Dishonored and Shortfuse close by enough to be able to step forward. Then you have to start considering objective burn / secure. Always got to be mindful, Trilly, while there's an I'm a Monster on the map. You know, if the Sages are thinking, all right, we're a bit ahead, we've been fighting pretty effectively, need to be able to drop it, pick it up, start it, re-drop it, things like that, around where Joshy is, because an I'm a Monster takes it over just about everything else on the map.
Yeah, a lot of burst potential from the Xibalba Storm, especially if Delnyy's playing zone duty and you have free reign of using a monster to try and go for that confirmation. But Oracle fights do start to add up as well. You want to make sure you've got vision towards that Fury. And it looks like this time around the Storm will be able to get that vision. So now, Sages can't really go for any pulls in the meantime. But a Trebuchet being sent out, you'd think warrants some grouping on the left side of the map. But it looks like at the moment Renjaru gets free reign and just trying to knock this down before it gets any tower damage. Priv and Oceans make the rotation over, but not going to net into anything else. Just going to be a Trebuchet that gets sent to its death, but Shortfuse seems to want a little extra.
Could be InMyZen that's in some trouble. The CC immunity wears out in time for Shortfuse to get the stun. The Scarab's Blessing, oh no, it hasn't gone that far. Oceans and Zen in some serious trouble. Zen easily cleaned up, and Oceans follows suit. A clean 2 for the Athenian Sages. This is something the Storm have been doing to other teams all weekend long. Quick, easy, double kills on the left side thanks to a Thor, thanks to a Ratatoskr, and now it's the Sages playing it against the Xibalba Storm themselves, and it looks like a Gold Fury to fall as well. First big advantage here in game 2.
Yeah, Dame was definitely onto it, but decided to go for some camps instead. Didn't want to go for the steal, recognized there's a stun, there's a Riptide, there's a lot of things that could just pull me back, and it wouldn't be worth it. Try and 50-50 that objective. We can just go for the Pyromancer, and unless Dishonored can find something, he will not. The Storm able to get the consolation prize in the Pyromancer and make sure this gold lead isn't too out of hand. Not quite 2,000, but still in favor of the Sages. They've been able to find some good picks on the left side of the map off the back of some great ultimates from Shortfuse. A part of all 4 of these kills and got credit for 3 of them, while Jangaru is sitting 1-0 on the Morgan Le Fay and mid as well. I'm thinking you want to play through this mid laner a little bit, just because level 16 at 15 minutes, the Morgan Le Fay, fully stacked Book of Thoth with Divine Ruin, is absolutely swinging. But there's no more objective to play for since they both went down, so probably back to farming, at least for a little bit.
Which then means you're looking for Shortfuse and Dame and their positioning on the map. Because it hasn't been a breakneck pace out of the jungle up to this point. Another early Soul Reaver for Joshy. It's actually the same exact build for Joshy. It's Divine Ruin into Charon's Coin into Soul Reaver. So burst damage will be there from this Scylla, depending on the targets that they connect onto. Privative has been very active setting up for the last couple of fights here, but this is going to be an odd-numbered engagement. An Abduct from Oceans and a Riptide needed from Priv, also the beads. And it looks like the Xibalba Storm happy to just call that a win. Shortfuse wasn't quite in range to assist. Don't mind it from Dame, step forward. See if he can force the beads off of Privative. So now this Yemoja a bit under threat, and Privative sticking with what was the overwhelmingly popular healing build, especially for supports a little while ago. That Lotus Crown. Now wishing Priv had some beads, but Jangaru again, remember peel, team peel, self-peel, it's there for Morgan Le Fay. River's Rebuke and Thor wall see to it. Sages get out. So it's been kind of a costly few moments over on the left side of the map from the Sages. They've lost ults and beads and haven't gained all that much.
Yeah, Delnyyy made the rotation all the way over here, all the while Dishonored pushing down that tier 1 tower. So the Storm are in a position where they have to go for this tier 1 if they don't want to fall behind. It looks like a possible kill on a Priv just on the edge of Pillars of Agony. And Dame gets credit for that one.
That feels terrible. Oh, but the re-engage from Shortfuse. That's 2 stuns, and the Aegis needed from Thor. And Zen's got the last bit of damage. It's Jangaru with the difference maker here. And the Xibalba Storm. They're able to add a couple of kills. Jangaru needing to get 1. Ends up being tower trades here, Trelly. And a slightly late rotation through from Dishonored. Didn't have much to say in that fight. So the Storm had extra kills, but Sages maybe can get some pressure here through Renjaru and Zen on left.
Yeah, I would argue that's still better for the Sages just because of the trade. Dishonored was able to push a lot of waves under. Now we have a level 18 Amaterasu, whereas Delnyyy just ticked over to level 17. And then you get another kill into Jangaru. You lose a little bit in the process, but Dishonored is so quick on this Ama, it's going to take away a bit of Dame's farm before the Lancelot can even step up to this speed buff. Now you're sitting at level 14. That's a 4-level deficit. It is going to be very difficult for Dame to ever try and fight into this Amaterasu without some help from the team. And it seems like just trying to ignore the Ama is the choice that he's decided to make. With Oni Fury and Pyromancer spawning in here shortly in about 2 or 3 minutes, you got to imagine that's where the next eyes will be. I like the grouping up for towers, though. You can tell the Storm are not just going to sit by idly as the Sages are able to free farm, but someone's going to have to deal with Ama. And Dishonored has some good amount of engage, already has the Shoguns and the Berserkers, so good attack speed as well. And that can translate to some quick objective burn if there's no vision towards these objectives.
Yeah, Renjaru happy with the way that game 2 has gone so far. You look at the attack speed. Obviously got to think of the ROM. We've seen Silver Branch builds back in the meta a bit as this ROM has increased in play. And not the same emphasis in shutting down Renjaru here in game 2 that the Xibalba Storm had in game 1. It's a ROM instead of a Freya, but still is going to reach critical mass here eventually. A couple big power spikes get hit from both the carries of the Sages. Tier 2 for Jangaru. And on the Obshard, and then the Executioner for Renjaru as well. So a bit of extra shred from both of those two. It's going to be important as well, Delnyyy with the Book of the Dead. Be able to survive a bit extra in some of these fights. Anti-heal needed for the Hades for sure. So it looks like the Oni Fury could be the next spot where these two teams meet. We haven't had a massive opening in this game just yet, but the Sages definitely playing with a bit of extra oomph now, after a nice trade in the last couple of minutes. And that oomph takes its way over to the Oni Fury, and the Sages the first to pull it. They'll have some shred, as mentioned before. Dishonored here early this time. And Jangaru with range. Steal potential, it's there. If the Xibalba Storm want it, but they won't steal it away. As Ocean's backpedaling out of this fight. He's just waiting for the Scarab's blessing when it's needed. It's on to Delnyyy for now, and the Anvil of Dawn finds 2. The Sages getting it all. It's a fight and a snipe and a double for Renjaru, as Dame left alone might make 3. He won't have the damage, and the Sages get it all.
Sages do. Now what's the call? Pyromancer has still spawned in, but do you have enough HP to just go for Fire Giant? With Dishonored here, the Amaterasu passive, and a Shogun's Gusari, I wouldn't be surprised if it's just right to Fire Giant. The Sages go. And with Joshy going over to the left side of the map and InMyZen clearing waves, you gotta feel confident going for the FG play like this.
Wow.
Tons of waves to burn through as well. Those Oni minions pushing up. Zen's best chance is to do this, try and grab a tier 2 tower, but it looks like Shortfuse is not gonna let that happen. The Thor on the way over to try and stop this Ishtar from getting some extra gold. And Dishonored has the teleports. If they want to chase down this kill, they have the opportunity to do so.
This would be big. This would be a great start to this Fire Giant power play. You called it, Trelly. Teleport in, and Zen will get the tier 2 tower. Maybe the best you can do in that moment. Odds on you're going to die, especially with Shortfuse getting that Anvil of Dawn back soon. Decent death timer, 45 or so seconds. Now there's a lot of towers for the Sages to work through. And so with a couple tier 2s, or a couple tier 1s rather, and all 3 tier 2s, Zen will be able to respawn in time to defend the real meaningful stuff. But life definitely made easier here. And just a few moments ago, talking about how there hasn't been the big opening yet. It's now the Sages, and really how different the Storm look. The Sages, the ones forcing the hand here in game 2.
Yeah, running down tier 2 in mid. Shortfuse is still pushing up the left side of the map, but probably smart to not defend this one. The Storm recognize, hey, we've got 2 over and right. We're not going to step up for any sort of towers, but maybe feeling confident enough to walk into Phoenix here. Dishonored takes a good bit of damage, though.
Now, Dishonored's got to use beads. Maybe you were trying to maximize the death timer of Zen, who just now respawned. Actually take a little under half of the health of that mid lane Phoenix away. And the team will rotate as 5 over to the tier 2 tower. You're wondering how confident the Xibalba Storm are feeling. The last couple fights have not felt the same from what we've seen in the last few sets, and really the smart call to back away. And so Phoenix is on the mind of the Athenian Sages. I mean, I figured, Trelly, with 2 minutes, 15 seconds left in this FG buff, 2 exposed Phoenixes, and 3,000 gold ready to be spent from your Ram. You'd love a chance to crack open one of these Phoenixes and set the stage for Fire Giant number 2.
Would be the call, and I think the Xibalba Storm know that, and they might want to put up the greatest defense they have. They want this game to continue. Getting Joshy to level 20 would be massive. Scylla gets some big power spikes once that last point gets thrown into I'm a Monster. And an upgraded starter item could go a long way as well. InMyZen upgrades the Ferocious Executioner, not deciding to go into another item, maybe just focusing on upgrading that starter item as well once level 20 gets reached. Some power spikes are close, but it looks like Delnyy's more focused on trying to get a Spectral Armor online instead of that upgraded starter item for this Hades. Wants to be tankier, wants to sit in Pillars of Agony a little bit longer in the face of all this crit damage that comes through from Renjaru. But it looks like grouping towards the right side. Want that last tier 2 tower. They still have 1 minute and 10 seconds left on this Fire Giant play. And they're going to do all they can with it, with the Riptide pushing some minions in. They are a bit split, though. Actually, it could be Dame that's in some trouble.
Dame being chased down by Dishonored. Goodness, this Amaterasu damage. Ults traded between Dame and Dishonored. That's opened up some spacing here on right. 45 seconds left in the first Fire Giant of the game. Mid lane Phoenix has sustained up basically all the damage that the Sages did to it just a moment ago. So now it's all back to even. I mean, you still consider it a massive win if you're the Athenian Sages. You've pulled far and away ahead. Another 4,500 gold on this Fire Giant power play alone. Definitely not a loss if you can't get one of these Phoenixes, but if you're really looking at the check boxes for victory, grabbing one would be ideal. Priv will just slow down the minions here.
I'm not sure how worth that is, though.
Makes the crush easier to get. Make the crush more effective from Joshy.
It's one thing if you're stalling for beads or for a cooldown, but Fire Giant runs out in 3 seconds, so that just...
Yeah, there was the last wave.
If they did want to go for it.
Which I'm going to assume they didn't. But if they did...
Yeah, then there was just nothing to be done either way. Gold Fury is back up. Interceptor on the board is something important for the defending team to grab if they want to keep those Phoenixes nice and regened. And doesn't look like they're going to be able to, because Shortfuse stole that one away. And now the Sages are able to grab that Fury, grab some buffs, and look towards this next Fire Giant. And that's going to be the one where these Phoenixes start to truly be looked at. It's not going to be easy to dive these Phoenixes unless Dishonored is the first one to start the fight, because it's not like you want Shortfuse with this build, full glass cannon, ulting into the backline, not when Scarab's Blessing is on the table. You're essentially trading your life for a revive if you make that play, unless you're able to hammer out. But Joshy was able to tick over to level 20 and upgrade that Pendulum of Ages, so big damage coming from the Scylla for sure. And it doesn't seem like InMyZen had enough gold to buy anything yet. Maybe just saving up for that upgraded starter item still. Mornate Arrow could help out with some extra crit chance in these fights. Does look like he's about 300 gold away as Fire Giant touches down, so I don't imagine we're going to see that one upgraded anytime soon. But 3 Storm heading down the left side of the map, possibly looking for a Phoenix, but all starting to channel their back for a second, and now it's just Zen.
Wow, so that was a half call. I mean, if they really shoved it, if the Storm really shoved left side, I think they could have gotten a Phoenix before the Sages got the fire and backed. The Oceans would have had to have tanked. It would have been close. But the call is ultimately the safe one from the Xibalba Storm, and there's no pressure back around the Fire Giant. So not enhanced just yet. You're not hyper worried if you're the Storm, but again, you know, I talked about steal and objective secure pressure from Joshy this game. We have not seen that attempted. Now, if you lose Joshy and the Fire Giant, suddenly you're in real dire straits. So it's just a roll of the dice that the Xibalba Storm have not wanted to take so far here in Game 2. Maybe hoping that you can have some good counter initiation. That's what we've seen a lot of this game. Shortfuse starting it with an Anvil of Dawn. Privative has been on it with the Rivers on the Yemoja. And then Dame, Delnyyy on kind of that second wave in have been the attempted answers from the Storm. But the composition, Trelly, how well is it built for Phoenix defense?
Like I said, if they can find a little bit of engage and try and bait out this ult, they have an option.
Right.
They can maybe find a little bit of engage from Shortfuse there, but it's not going to be easy to bait that ultimate out because I'm assuming Shortfuse feels just fine going for a wall into the double tap, you know, like trying to set up for just Renjaru to go for a full ult. You got to remember, you don't need a kill to get this bird down. You just need to poke out some of the frontliners on the side of the Storm. If Shortfuse is able to make a play like that, and the rest of the team can just set up so easily, and that would be not too difficult. I think a Riptide could do the same thing if Priv could find that on a frontliner. In this case, if Oceans gets whooped in, could be some big follow-up, but it looks like the call here is to split up a bit. Maybe send Dishonored and Shortfuse down mid and protect this Trebuchet so the left side bird can be looked at. Hasn't started swinging away just yet, but Joshy will be able to poke it out from a distance.
It'll take a little while, though. I mean, that's a long Trebuchet burn. Gonna very slowly work down the health on this Phoenix. Won't get anywhere close to killing it off, but every little bit of damage helps. You can tell how difficult this is for the Sages. Oceans takes a little bit of poke, backs away. Zen, of course, with long-range autos. Get very close to dealing the killing blow to the Trebuchet, and Joshy finishes it off. So half health on a couple member of the Storm here, but that hasn't necessarily made the Sages all that comfortable in walking forward. Delnyyy at the drop of a hat could blink in, throw up the Pillars of Agony. Beads down from Priv and beads down from Dishonored. But Dishonored, of course, with the dazzling offensive, can shrug off a lot of that CC. It's just awkward now. Maybe the door opened. A Shortfuse looking for a target. And it's the threat of this Anvil of Dawn that sends the Xibalba Storm back, and the left side Phoenix to its grave.
That's all it takes. Just go up into the sky, make everyone from the Storm retreat, and now you got 50 seconds to play with on this middle Phoenix. Are the Sages going to feel confident going in? Maybe. Now's the time to Riptide back some of those waves and stall it out as long as possible. Without that Anvil of Dawn, it doesn't look like you have an immediate engage, and you're not going to have to deal with fire minions if you are the Storm for at least 2 more waves of regular minions. So it's not going to be difficult to defend this as long as the Storm can hold their ground and hold on to these ultimates. I'm thinking Joshy could go massive here with that I'm a Monster, trying to push back the tankier members of the Sages. 15 seconds left. I'm thinking that's done. This Phoenix is probably going to stand tall.
Yeah, I think so, but better map state for the Sages after this Fire Giant than the first one. And you're glad you got one of the Phoenixes, because if you didn't get any of the Phoenixes, that Fire Giant wouldn't have changed the map state at all. All 3 were open at the start of that Fire Giant, and at least one will fall. And it's the good one for the Sages. You get the left side. Somebody from the Storm's going to have to deal with it. Nobody has teleport. Also worth looking at as well. So if there is fire minion pressure pouring down left, the Xibalba Storm are just going to have to send someone back to base and deal with it. So the Sages in a fantastic spot, not only gold-wise, but map state-wise. We're talking about 17,000 gold for the Athenian Sages. Not close at all. And the XP difference, Trailer, just really looks nice at 28,000. But it's the support differential. That's the difference maker here. This is where life gets real difficult for Oceans, I imagine. I mean, you've got Sovereignty and Heartward and Thebes, so you've got the good aura items, but level 17, you are gonna pop. Name of the game may just be stay alive for a Scarab's Blessing. Give one of your teammates a second chance. Now, we have not seen a Fire Giant defense from the Storm yet, Trelly, but none of them have been enhanced. Is this a must-contest objective if you're the Xibalba Storm?
I don't think it's a must-contest, but it seems like it's something the Storm want to try and go for. Delnyyy and Joshy already stepping up to this enhanced Fire Giant. They're in the position where they can wait maybe 15 more seconds, and if they are not fighting, someone has to go back for that. And it looks like Delnyy's going to start the fight anyways.
That's right, Delnyyy looking for the back climb, but Delnyyy left alone. It's a Scarab's Blessing used by Oceans right on time. Where is Anvil of Dawn? Searching for a target. Joshy is the target, and Joshy one-tapped by Shortfuse. And now an opening for the Athenian Sages, but no ultimates remaining. You need all of the sustain that Priv can provide. Xibalba Storm, they lose their mid laner. I'm a Monster never got used, neither did Aegis. There was too much damage too quickly from the Sages in their dive.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because I think the Storm, if they wanted to make a defense, were forced to go in when they did. So props to Delnyyy for forcing some relics, forcing some escapes, and trying to get that fight started. They had the Anvil of Dawn to chase down really anyone that went too far. And in this case, I thought Delnyyy would be the target, but I think Shortfuse also knew exactly how much damage this Thor was able to dish out. Gets the beads from Dame as well. Looks like that's going to be all Shortfuse is after. And Joshy was just the easiest target at that point. Anvil of Dawn's gone, and a quick auto attack.
Yep.
Enough to clean that one up. With EFG marching into this right side bird is the play, and I don't see much of a defense happening.
Joshy about to respawn. Remember, this is where some of that long-range poke from Jangaru can really pay off. It's been a very effective, but quite effective game from Jangaru at 203. Half of the kills affected by this Morgan Le Fay, but almost top damage in the game. Wouldn't be surprised if that changes here in this last fight. Renjaru on a killing spree. Delnyyy in alone. Oh, that I'm a Monster is big. And that's what the Storm needed. A burst of excitement from their mid laner, but Delnyyy dashes forward with no cooldowns. And so the Athenian Sages are able to repel the immediate attack. Renjaru gets lost, but it's another 2 kills for the Sages.
Now one more Phoenix to go as that left one actually spawned back in as well. Shortfuse should be able to make short work of that bird, and mid Phoenix also going to drop. It's just Dame, Joshy, and Zen left to defend, but it doesn't seem like the Sages are going to go in just yet. Remember, Dame's beads are down. One little stun could be enough to find a push into this or the Titan room.
But is it the fight that the Sages are looking for? Looks like Dame is going to squeak right on by the River's Rebuke. Joshy has found a lot of damage in these last couple of moments around all of the chaos that's going on, but it hasn't been enough yet. It looks like the Athenian Sages, they just want one more reset, one more breather before closing out this game. I got to imagine they've got enough damage just to funnel it into the Titan and end things, but life made a lot easier, Trelly, when you've got 3 waves of fire minions at your back. The Xibalba Storm, they've looked different, very different from what we've seen here in Game 2, and looks like the Sages are going to shove us to a Game 3.
Does seem that way. Coming back from 3 Phoenixes down is not an easy task, especially not when the gold lead is one that's this massive. I mean, Oceans is still working on his 4th item after his starter, whereas everyone else on the side of the Sages are full slotted. Upgraded relics, working on the 3K pots, or already popped them. They've got a ton of DPS. Still EFG for another minute and 20. And the Sages are pushing forward. I don't hate this call. Unfortunately for them, they stepped over a ward.
Be awkward.
So I'm thinking the Storm know exactly where the Sages are.
They're backing now.
And you don't have a great engage. It's not like you have a To the Skies from Horus or a
Right.
Janisol. You really do just have to walk up to Titan if that's your call. And that's not going to be an easy task. Joshy's got good damage still. There is a Scylla in play. So grouping up and just charging for that Titan, charging for the end, and getting hit by a 3-man Sikkim is not the call that the Sages want to go for. Decent poke on a Delnyyy, though.
Yeah, Delnyyy wants to be, oh, that's an early Scarab's Blessing. Suddenly massive utility missing from the Xibalba Storm on defense. I was going to say, you know, at least we're getting a full build here. Delnyy's there, Dame's there, Joshy's there. InMyZen, 1 tier away from it. Now, of course, you're talking about power potions, upgraded relics, things like that. Delnyyy wants to fight away from the Titan. The Pillars of Agony hits no one, and Jangaru hits Delnyyy. Oceans without Scarab's Blessing will fall as well. The writing's been on the wall for quite some time, and Renjaru, with at least a double, will end Game 2. in a game 3 with it all to play for between the Sages and the Storm right around the corner.
It really does seem like giving Thor to either one of these junglers can be a death sentence. Shortfuse, a phenomenal performance on this jungler, as well as I think the carries of the Sages with help from that Thor in the early just got set up for so much easy damage as the game continued. It was not an easy defense from the Storm. They could not step up. Anytime they saw that Thor go up, they had to retreat, say, okay, we can't defend that Phoenix. We can't defend any of the Phoenixes, and then it became the point where they couldn't defend anything, and that was just a full-on wipe.
Now, look, that's a 36-minute game. It drags on a little bit, but if I'm the Sages, I'm thinking from game 1 to game 2, we forced the Storm to look completely different in their play style from what we've seen in the last 3, 4, 5 games that they have played. I am running back the exact same draft strategy if we can, if we're the Athenian Sages. It is the last SCC matchup of the year for now, of 2022, and it's all to play for. Group stages for either the Sages or the Storm after game 3, which is coming up right after this.
I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone in progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone in affection, I summon and dub it. Cause I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone in progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone in affection, I summon and dub it. Why you be all in my line about nothing? Why won't you go get you $1 or something? Don't hang with a who line for nothing. I see that we different, you riding, I double. I don't do discussions on bragging about hundreds. Don't go to your places, I know that they sunken. Don't call me your brother, I barely could trust you. I talked to a shorty, she bagging the bugging. And I'ma need all of my dollars on corporate, so hand me the money, I divvy the pie. I'ma give all of my people a portion to build them a fortune on flipping the ride. I can't be mixy when iffy the vibe, and 40 on 50 is really the time. Why is you all on my phone like you want me, like you wasn't pushing the kid to the side? I don't know if you thinking I'm blind. Cross on my crosses and dot on my eyes. Done with your efforts, I'm dealing with pressures. I know it's a lesson, that's word of the wise. Dubbing the mixes I'm mixing, I know I've been missing. I needed some personal time. All the pictures, dimensions, I don't with your digits. I mean it, I'm staying inside. Cause I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone in progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone in affection, I summon and dub it. Cause I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems I solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage. I'm going through something, that's why I ain't calling. Phone in progression, it's all that I wanted. The phone in affection, I summon and dub it.
You interrupt me and I interrupt you. A shame. When did we start losing and stop giving? I remember I gave it time, time, time. I love my time, time, time. Now my mind's lost in its thoughts. I want you, you want only you. But my heart's all tied up in knots.
Well, it takes them a little while to get it done, but the Sages are able to come out and tie up this set. Mifflin, they do it with a massive gold lead for a long duration of that game. Again, changes that needed to be made going into game number 2 were made. Now they're looking at the barrel of potentially coming over one more game and being able to send themselves to the SWC group stages.
Yeah, and Gore, I'm going to steal a bit of your analysis because I think you've said it best in the past. When you can't kill the backline, how can you expect to win the game? It just felt like the Sages, they didn't have to worry about it. Their front line, tanky, in your face at all times. The Storm's front line, not very tanky, in your face for all of 10 seconds until they died, and the back line of the Sages just got to watch on.
Hang out and visualize what was going on, like you said. Look, it comes down to a few things. First off, Shortfuse on Thor. Always a good look. I've got to give credit over to this Rama. I think we've seen a lot of really good Ishtar play over the last few weeks. This week in NA, last week in Europe, a few weeks ago in the SBL. But I feel like there's something to be said about what Rama can bring to the table. Like you said, when your backliner's just able to get this much damage out there. Feels pretty clean. I mean, you're 20 minutes in, you as a carry have 4 assists and you're just hanging out already. That's got to feel really solid. I also, and Mifflin, this one surprised me when we first saw it. Still kind of surprises me to see it, but now maybe more so in the sense that I'm surprised it's not coming out more often. The Morgan Le Fay has been on point almost every time we've gotten to see it so far this week.
Yeah, Morgan still has really strong poke, still has unreactable point-blank CC, still has a massive CC immune ultimate, and pretty decent ranged artillery damage. I think the reason we don't see her as consistently is that she does struggle a bit in the pressure department, but considering the pace of the early game of Game 2 of this set, I don't think it mattered how bad her early game was. There wasn't a whole lot happening on the screen, and by the time this Morgan Le Fay was legitimately getting active in the team fight, it was about a 4,000 or 5,000 gold lead for the Athenian Sages, and that only continued to balloon out of control throughout the entire duration of this match. And it feeds into that issue I was talking to you about a little bit earlier, where the back line of the Sages just weren't dying rather. It's because when the Storm got there, for the most part, it was Jangaru, the recipient of all that aggression.
Yep.
He just dropped Dragonflight. Good luck. Pre-beats it next time. And there was no correct guesses in situations like that. I will say, though, there is a concern for the Sages going into Game 3. Anytime a gold lead extends to that 20,000 to 25,000 mark, you got to think, wow, how did the game go long enough for this to happen? The Sages played very, very slow around a lot of their advantages.
Yeah.
If that goes another 10 or so minutes, your 20,000 gold lead starts to mean less and less. That's why some of the best teams in the league can win with 3,000, 4,000 gold leads or very concise 20-minute games. They don't give you opportunities to jump back into the match. The Sages, I'm not sure you can say the same of them just yet. If it's against a team that is a bit more used to playing from behind, or maybe even just one of the SPL squads, if the Athenian Sages find themselves moving on in the event and lining up against them, you got to think, given that many opportunities, some of these more veteran squads might be able to find ways back in.
And able to punish you maybe in much more convincing manners as well. The good news is, for the Storm at least, the Sages have to do that again in order to move on. The Storm, one game away for both these squads from the SWC group stage, where they will join the Titans, the Valkyries, the Ravens, the Hounds, the Warriors, the Scarabs, and Hex Mambo. Definitely not an easy place for NA number 2 as well, specifically the group that you'll be joining, the Warriors, the Scarabs, and Hex Mambo. It's a very tight group. You're going to have to show up and play. And like you said, if you're looking at the Sages, maybe some clean play necessary to make sure things happen their way. We do, though, Mifflin, get the Morgan, the Athena, and the Vulcan banned out. Ratatoskr, first pick. Dame's been absolutely insane this weekend on this pick. So not going to be complaining about that one. Other side, Thor, Ymir, and the Maui banned out. And they do lock in the Ram over the Ishtar this time around for the Sages. So looking at this, you have to think that Maui shift did end up hurting Oceans a little more than maybe was expected going into it.
It's just such a departure from play style between Maui and Khepri. Khepri, if you are initiating the fight, point blank, right in your face, have to dedicate your body. And then for the most part, afterwards, it's let me peel back, make sure Scarab's Blasting is getting onto one of my own priority targets. Whereas Maui, it's, oh, there's like a guy 50 yards away. I'm going to lift up the entire landmass under him and him at the exact same time. That ranged initiation is a different skill set, considering how often Oceans has gone towards that pick this week in particular. Before this last match, it was 7 games in a row of Maui. I think his team had become accustomed to that style of play a bit too much. So now having had one more game to get back into the swing of things, I expect a much better performance from Oceans here in Game 3.
I'm excited to see what god Ocean's going to be playing. Ishtar, Merlin locked in there for the Sages alongside the Ratatoskr. So you got all your carries. You know exactly what's going to be happening. It's frontline that is missing there for the Sages. Other side, you got your Yemoja, the Nike, and the Ram re-locked in. They go through a couple of bans, the Bologna and the Cabrakan,
Face the
banned
wrath
out
of a
Mifflin by the
sorceress
Sages.
scorned.
And on the other side, you get rid of the Pele and the Lancelot. Morgan Le Fay makes her way back into this one, and you had said it. You got to pre-beat some of this stuff. You dive too much, throw all your attention on her. She's just going to shrug it off, and then that's what we got to see in game number 2.
But the dive potential already from the Storm, I think, a bit better. You've got the Ratatoskr who can close gap into that back line super easily. The Cthulhu who's going to be knocking you up all the time from max range, just continuous CC in some of these team fights. Means that now with Bacchus as well, you've got a lot of things you need to concern yourself as Le Fay. You really do need to hold on to that Dragonflight for very specific interactions. And even Bacchus in that 1v1, if we want to evaluate how this support could really make it difficult for this mid laner. Belly flop into Belch, Dragonflight all you want. It simply doesn't work against him when he's channeling that ability. So there's a lot of really strong dive potential here from the Storm that I expect to make it difficult for Morgan. But if they're dedicating all their time to dealing with this one pick, could open up a bit of opportunities elsewhere for the rest of your team.
Well, we've got one game left of the championship. Winner here goes to the SWC group stages. And who better to take us through game number 3 than Dave and Trelly?
Last game of 2022. We'll go on a break for a couple of weeks, and we'll be back in 2023. The winner of this matchup continues on. Group stages for the SWC around the corner for them. The loser of Game 3, they're done. Not only for the year, but for Season 9 in general. Stakes at an all-time high. And it'll all get resolved here, Trelly, in Game number 3. We've seen some high-stakes moments today. We've seen Lionel Messi step up, World Cup final, take a penalty kick to start it off for his team. And now we get to see Sages and Xibalba Storm do the same thing for their squad in Game 3 of the NA SCC Championship.
You're telling me we get to figure out who's Messi on the board right now out of these 10?
So the person, if we're the same
In this context.
first blood, is the Lionel Messi because Messi scored the first PK. So first blood is Lionel Messi.
All right, well,
only if it's on the winning team, though. There's a lot more, of a dynamic shift in this.
I'd be willing to bet it's either Dame or Shortfuse, just by nature of the way these
been,
games have gone. Whichever one of these junglers can get active first. And because Rat went Mannequin Scepter, has Blink, Shortfuse wants to wait till level 5, Dame's got a little bit more of an opportunity to get active in the early just by nature of, actually has some good CC on Rat. You've got a slow, you've got a stun, whereas Hunbat's quite literally just has the slow on your leap if you're engaging that way. Could be tough. It could be tough to find that first blood unless you're waiting until level 5. If you're burning beat, if Shortfuse is getting beats burned, which is certainly possible, Priv has a fair bit of CC in this dual lane, and more specifically Jangaru has that opportunity as well. Then Shortfuse certainly does have some opportunities here. But I think just by nature of early damage and the way that Dame plays this Rat, I'd be keeping my eye on him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's my big pivot back here for Game 3 is we've actually seen Dame have great games on Lancelot throughout this weekend. So not like he can't get it done on these semi-global picks. We'll meet Shortfuse. Remember, Mannequin Scepter for the Ratatoskr, but a 1-level discrepancy makes a bit of a difference here. Shortfuse a bit low on mana, but should be able to cycle through those abilities, and actually the blink away from Dame felt necessary. Keep him on the map. The semi-global difference was definitely felt in Game 2, I think, where the backline not quite as easily reached. The insta-gib was simply not there, and that's a big boost for the Xibalba Storm team. Joshy also back on a very strong pick in the Merlin. I think that scales nicely and has looked great. All championship long. And I don't think it can be understated the type of run this Storm team are on. They've been a competitive team all through Phase 3, all through the end of the year here in Season 9, but they're your 5th seed. I mean, saying they squeaked into the playoffs is a bit understated or overstated, but it was not the overwhelming victorious phase for this squad, and now just one win away from being second North American representative. Of course, the Eldritch Hounds already getting it done earlier on today. The expected team to advance, and it all felt up for grabs, that second spot. The Sages were able to answer back a very, very good start to this set from the Xibalba Storm. And that's got to be on the mind, I think, Trelly, of Shortfuse here, trying to keep pace with Dame. That this Hun Batz has good setup and damage potential. That's got to be there if you're going to match what Dame has been able to get done on this Ratatoskr.
I gotta say, I'm already a bit intimidated if I'm Jangaru because Joshy has one of those sweet capes, and you have to grind.
Yeah, what
for
cape
those.
was that?
You have to grind for those things, man. I don't think I have like any besides the default you get, and I play a lot of Smite as is. I mean, I think I've got a couple of them, but like that one, I don't even know which one.
I gotta be honest,
is.
I have no.
That one
as if showing it to me suddenly.
Yeah, that one looks to me like you have to travel a certain distance or like ward vision or something.
Right, it's awesome, whatever it is. And he's got a party hat, and he's got the level up on. It's great. I actually love the auto attacks in that stance on the Wise Old Man skin. One of my favorite crossovers that we've done.
Oh yeah, it's so good.
Joshy plays the Merlin like a wise old man, that's for sure. Plenty of setup from the rest of the team, you'd imagine. Now it's level 5 for Dame. Tends to be time to gank duo lane more often than not. But is it easy to gank a Yemoja and Ram, who are both also 25? Remains to be seen.
That's really the question, because I think if Shortfuse wants to camp Dishonored, there certainly is room to be done. But you kind of have to make sure Dishonored hits a knock-up before Delnyyy even hits the ground, before he's got a chance to descend into madness. You got to have that Fear No Evil ready to go to try and CC chain, because if you let Cthulhu go up in and descend to madness, become CC immune, get extra HP, there's a lot that makes it much more difficult to try and gank that Guardian over in the solo lane. So probably why we haven't seen any aggression put towards that lane yet. And it's not like Dame's got an easy time because there's a Nike over there, and since there's no Sunder in play, you know there's going to be a big health bar you got to go through either way. So buff, or I guess blue buff, back to farming has been the strategy so far, especially when, I mean, it's not putting it lightly saying their season is over. One misplay could be enough to put the other team in favor of going to SWC group stages, and that has got to be the goal for both of them. So makes sense that they're playing this game, or at least the start of this game, a little slower.
Yeah, Trevor, we've seen game 3s just throughout the year slow down. Anyway, like middle of phase 2, get your random game 3 for one of these teams. Those slow down because you want to win your sets.
Yep.
This is the end of your year. I mean, this is not just phase 2, week 3 North American SCC matchup for one of these two squads. This is it. I mean, if you have hopes and dreams of playing on the world stage, upsetting one of our SPL teams, playing in front of a crowd, this game 3 gets you there, or at least one step closer. So you're right. I mean, no mistakes allowed. Maybe a couple if your team is able to answer back. This is a good aggressive start for Shortfuse and Dishonored. Little pressure onto both of the back camps on the Xibalba Storm side of the jungle, and Dame just slowly rotates back through, realizes his camps are gone, and hasn't found his opening here just yet. Back to the Morgan Le Fay for Jangaru, and I kind of mentioned it at the game, or the end of game 2 there, Trelly. It wasn't like this big name in the lights type of performance, but ends that game close to, if not on top of the damage charts. Just got good confirmable range damage. But the Storm were just not able to answer back throughout the course of the game.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't make it much easier this time around either. I said last game, the Morgan Le Fay's got that good self-peel. You know, for a Lancelot, it's hard to just use all of your abilities when you know you can be CC chain. Ratatoskr has that same issue. You want to be melee range if you're looking to land on the Jangaru. And if you can time it correctly, you can have a fear landing right off that through the Cosmos, into the Dragonflight, and you can really make Dame's life miserable on those CC chains. And it looks like a possible invade here. And they're looking, here it is, blinking a knockup.
Yep, could be the first action of the game, but ultimate reached by Dame. Had to be right then. Couldn't have been a second later. And he found the sky.
Wow.
Love the call from Dishonored and Shortfuse. That's pressure from Dame, realizing his last rotations of back camps were taken away. Knew he needed to be there on time. And Dishonored and Shortfuse were able to call him on it.
I mean, that is not easy. I talked about it earlier. Like, Dishonored has to knock up Delnyyy into the Fear No Evil to make sure that ult didn't happen. It happened this time, but Dame got the ult off. There's no beats. He had to channel through the Cosmos before he hit the ground, and before Shortfuse used Fear No Evil, or else that would have been a CC chain possibly into death. My man must have been mashing that button, making sure to get up there, and that's huge. Because you lose Fear No Evil, sure, you lose through the Cosmos, but I think Dame fighting without ult, much better than Shortfuse fighting without ult, at least for the time being. Ratatoskr just has so much more built-in damage early on. So that's going to be a little bit of time before the Athenian Sages can try to get aggressive again, but they have pulled ahead a little bit gold-wise, about 400 in XP as well. Looks like just by nature of Dame getting his back camps invaded, things like that, and put this rat a little bit behind as well.
Yeah, that's right. And Priv feels a bit of that XP gain. Though Dame is going to settle that score quite quickly. So again, no real big lines forming in the early stages of this game. You actually mentioned Sunder earlier on. Oceans picks it up. So it's on the opposite side of the map for the time being from this Nike. Chooses to fully upgrade it, or upgrade to that next tier. So putting a bit of gold into melting down some of these tankier targets and their shields early in this game. And you know, we haven't talked much about this Bacchus yet, Trelly. You know, I think the death said, what, 7 straight games, something like that for Oceans on Maui. Finally gets banned out, does something different on the Khepri, did not look great. Maui gets banned again, but clearly Oceans wants to be more of an initiator. Did I say that right? That sounded really weird.
An initiator?
And
yeah.
He wants to be more of an initiator.
Yeah.
They kind of blend together. And so he picks up the Bacchus here for game 3. Certainly gives him that possibility.
No, I love this pick. You have so much lockdown in the biggest issue, and I think the biggest reason that Sunder isn't picked up on just about everyone, is that it's kind of a skill shot, right? You actually have to be able to hit it to get access to that shred. Whereas, you know, a horrific emblem, you just pop, you hit everyone, it's fine. A sprint, same thing. Sunder, you have to make sure you can land, and Bacchus comes with 2 easy setups for that Sunder. You can belch into Sunder, you can knock up into Sunder, and that just means that you get so much extra value because you guarantee don't waste it on just trying to go for that skill shot. The fact that Dishonored has a huge shield makes it so much easier because you know what target you're saving it for, right? You could still use it to break the shell of Privative. You could still use it that way. But it's also very nice to just blow up these tankier targets. In this case, the Nike. That's going to have that massive shield later on in the game. Dishonored's going to think he's much tankier than he is. And then Oceans can counter that so easily. But Shortfuse, I was going to say, could be posting up here a little bit. It looks like it's going to be chased down, though. Dame was also ready to follow up if that knock-up connected, but with some good knock community and also just not in range. Shortfuse will be just fine.
It's grouping around the Oracles. Clearly not fighting for the Gold Fury just yet, but it could turn into a Gold Fury pull depending on how this fight goes, because Delnyyy is here. You spent the time of your solo laner to rotate in. That's left Dishonored alone over in solo. A couple back camps to steal away. Delnyy's going to rotate back through, and maybe Dame as well. So this is an accurate read on what Dishonored wants to be doing on the rotation out. Get a couple of the smalls, but not the big harpies. And you can already tell, Trelly, just how tense some of these fights are. Ocean's belly flops in, Shortfuse dashes away. I guess I don't mind the aggressive rotation out from Delnyyy. Got to be careful. If you die there, it gives Dishonored massive advantage.
Yeah, it certainly does. I think it's going to be the biggest wave. It's lost a bit of the wave to the tower. It wasn't like Dishonored was able to steal a blue buff in the meantime.
Not game-changing, right?
But Delnyyy still would have loved to get active there. Maybe if the blink was available. I mean, Delnyyy hit 12 but wasn't actually able to get a second relic. Privative's going to take some damage here, and actually the ult is extended. Not going to be able to find the stun. River's Rebuke also not available. Here comes Dame.
Dame is here. Oh no, but the rat ult doesn't hit the knockup. Do you need it? Because Sunder's out, and Dame arrives here in game 3 at the 12-minute mark. It's finally first blood for the Xibalba Storm, and it's been dual lane all weekend long from Dame, early on these picks. And it's over to duo once again.
I was going to yell goal, but probably not. Probably not the best target. Gold Fury is going to be started up here. Renjaru goes to the sky, maybe a bit early on those snipes.
Oh, but the Xibalba Storm confirmed the Gold Fury. Despite a steal attempt from Renjaru, massive win early in game 3 for the Storm. And a spike upwards, exactly 1,000 gold ahead on the first blood. And the Gold Fury confirm. So a costly death there from Privative. Hard to avoid, but you talked about early value from that Sunder. The shell didn't matter much. And the Xibalba Storm make their advantage known.
Yep, Ocean's in the right place at the right time, able to chase down Priv. And that all stems from, maybe if Rivers Rebuke was there, Priv is much safer in that regard. I'm not going to say guaranteed lives, but wasting it at the Oracle fight means that ultimate was not available for quite some time, not there to try and block off that duo lane. And now we can see the Sages actually grouping towards the Pyromancer. Oceans and Joshy are onto this. It's going to be started up here, but Bacchus and Merlin, they've got good damage, and here comes Delnyyy as well.
That's right. The Storm, sensing something's afoot on the right side of the map, will step forward, and the Pyromancer gets dropped. Absolutely not worth for the Sages to pull and lose team members over the Pyromancer. Actually, really nice denial from the Storm on the left side of the map as well. Now you've got a Merlin who's a couple items in. Fully stacked Book of Thoth, Divine Ruins, so you're going to have Shred if the Storm end up wanting to go back. But it's a bit different here in this game, Trelly, where yes, you've got Dame and this over-the-top sort of ease of execution and getting into the back line, but as we move forward into this game, early to mid, out of the laning phase, into the jungles, potentially is where Shortfuse can really swing with these Fear No Evils.
Yeah, I think that ultimate just gets more value as the game goes on. Just by nature of Hunbatz has some pretty good scaling, and also, if you get a hi-rez, which, of course, Shortfuse already has, those auto attacks late game also really do start to slap. So I'm keeping my eyes on the Hunbatz for sure, and on the beads timers for everyone on the side of the Xibalba Storm. But that Pyromancer was leashed and immediately dropped, so still is available. If the Athenian Sages, or in this case the Storm, wanted to go for it, have that availability, but Dishonored does go for a wraparound play, and maybe regretting it as immediately starts to back up there. It finds no damage, except for a little bit of poke onto Dame. But as I said, the Pyromancer is available, so I think both of these teams are aware of that, and Delnyy's going to start it up.
Yeah.
But Shortfuse has Fear No Evil, could disrupt this Pyro.
All right, could be disrupted. Remember, no massive burst secure advantage really for either team. Pyro slightly reset. Rivers Rebuke goes up, but the Storm get the Pyro nonetheless. Oceans and Delnyyy have created a whole lot of space. That's an area where Dame wants to be. It'll be another knock-up on a Dishonored. Privative left to burn, and a double stun, and a double pull, and my goodness! It's simply too strong from the Storm right now. They've run over the Athenian Sages. As Oceans backs away from Dishonored, the carries of the Sages finally getting involved, but may just be too late. All of this for just the support. The Storm will take it on a 2-for-1 trade plus Pyro.
But they are going to be able to grab this tier 1 as well. Actually, no, the teleport too scary. Joshy does not want to commit to that one. So good teleport in from Dishonored, recognizes they don't want to lose any more gold. The Sages, that is. So Storm are able to grab that Pyro and the pick after, only losing Oceans in the process. I think that Fear No Evil could have been sent out a bit earlier. Maybe just realized that if it was off the mark, Dame had an opportunity to try and find a solo kill. So just wanted to use it for peel, but not the greatest use. If you hold, the longer you hold on to it, waiting for that perfect opportunity, the more your team really needs it. So the Storm were able to push themselves ahead about 2,000 gold, and that Primal Fury will be spawning in here shortly. And the Storm have that map state. They've got the XP, they've got the gold. You have to imagine with having InMyZen at level 16 as well, with a pretty good item boost over Renjaru, I'm going to feel pretty good about going for the Primal Fury off spawn. You've already highlighted how much burst damage both these teams are lacking. They've got that good burn, but when it comes to the actual objectives, going for a 50-50,
Yep.
I would say not in favor of either of these teams. Morgan Le Fay definitely the best, but still a snowball in from Joshy or the snipes from Renjaru could be disastrous for either one of these squads.
Right, ends up maybe being a true 50-50, just whichever ability, slight damage, connects at the perfect time. Oceans will step forward. Everybody's patience as back into game number 3 we go. We've picked up right where we left off with the Xibalba Storm dominating the left side of the map. And now fully convert that into the left side objective, the Primal Fury secured. And Shirley, just prior to our quick break there, we were talking about maybe mental breaking moments. The Athenian Sages, they swing for the fences. They think they've maybe got a dive on InMyZen. But Zen plays it wonderfully, and now a Fury drops. The alarm bells weren't ringing. Now they're starting to buzz a bit in my ears if I'm the Sages.
Yeah, definitely. The 1v2 from Zen, essentially, I'm not going to say won that fight because I think the rest of the team was on the way. But definitely mental shattering there for Shortfuse. I think the Rolling Thunder puts him in combat. He's not able to blink. He has to jump in, eat a lot of Ishtar damage, and some good crit RNG was enough to make sure that InMyZen wins that one. And also excellent Aegis timing. Got, I believe, the overhead smash and the last hit of the Rama snipes. That's pretty much the most burst that you're going to be taking in a 2v1 in that situation. So the Storm put themselves in an excellent position. Renjaru doesn't even want to make the rotation over.
He's got to be careful.
Because he's rather push that tower down. It looked like for a second, Dame was like, should I rotate over and go help? But why not stay on this side of the map when Pyromancer's about to spawn in? And that was the correct play. This Pyromancer can go down for free and you just lose a tier 1 in the meantime. Zen's already online. I mean, he's got crit, he's got Xe Kins. Wouldn't be surprised if Fire Giant started to be looked at here, but it looks like Joshy wants to go back for some extra itemization, possibly finish up that Soul Reaver. So the Xibalba Storm are not going to go for the Fire Giant just yet. They're going to back, upgrade some items, and then maybe look towards the right side of the map.
InMyZen, you know, I had been hyping up Griff really heavily all weekend long. I thought that a Warden's team that needed to really find an identity were able to find one with Griff, and now InMyZen, who have had, or the Xibalba Storm rather, who have had plenty of win conditions over their last few sets and are making a miraculous run now. A 5th seed team on the verge of making it out, where only 2 teams did out of 8. I think InMyZen has really, really impressed me, whether it's been the Ishtar, the Ram, plenty of other picks. Has filled the need for the Xibalba Storm team, and now will supply most of the damage to the Fire Giant alongside Joshy. Privative steps forward in a River's Rebuke. Delays, but delay may not be enough. Could be a completed dive here from Dame. If you want to chase down the backline, you sure do. Up and over, goes Shortfuse, and that's already a Fear No Evil gone. Simply nothing working right now for the Athenian Sages. Oceans dodges 1 and 2, but 3 will hit, and Renjaru needed it, but he was out of the fight for so long that the Xibalba Storm simply steamroll the Sages. And a 3-for-1 trade plus FG seems just fine.
Shortfuse would like to get here in time, but there is no way with how much damage InMyZen is doing towards this Fire Giant. As you said, the 1-for-3 trade is certainly one the Storm are happy to take, and now they're able to group up and push down some towers in the meantime. You've got Jangaru gone for 25, Renjaru down for 30. But it doesn't look like the Storm want to push, even though they've got the numbers advantage. Maybe farming to level 20, get some of these starter items is the call, because they're very close on 3 different members. And InMyZen still hasn't upgraded yet, so he just ticked over to level 20. Dame wants to hit 2 levels away, but more specifically Delnyyy also ticked over to level 20. So big power spikes for the entirety of the Xibalba Storm. And they're doing some great damage at the moment to pretty much everyone on the side of the Sages. We saw Priv walk up, take asunder, and then Ocean's almost finished that kill himself. Went for the Intoxicate, tried to chase down that one. Some good snipes from Renjaru, missed a couple, but the finisher, the one that counts, was able to finish up that kill. But besides that, not too many high points from the Athenian Sages team fight. You're down about 6,000 gold, and it's only going to get worse once these towers drop. Still 3 tier 2s and 1 tier 1 available. You got to imagine the Storm are feeling confident when walking up to these.
I agree. I mean, oftentimes we talk about the first Fire Giant as the setup FG. The game is already so lopsided with all of this extra gold that this might just be not the one that you end the game on, though the Storm were able to do that in game 1 out of nowhere. But the Sages simply watch all of this gold fall. It could be the effective game-ending Fire Giant, where sure there might not be a Phoenix down yet, but what was already a near impossible climb may become impossible if the Xibalba Storm are simply able to take all this with ease. But then the counter argument is you're so far behind already, you're not dying to defend a tier 2. It's a horribly awkward spot for the Sages. And they will, unfortunately, just have to let their towers drop. So it's Phoenix defense time for the Sages team. You've got a Yemoja, and you've got some range damage, as well as a Fear No Evil. Delnyyy simply walks forward. Phoenix does hurt, though. You can only tank that up for so long. Maybe your hope, Traily, is Fear No Evil catches someone from the Storm. Maybe Privative can lock someone in. There's no Phantom Shell picked up for the Xibalba Storm, so the walls will really be effective. Got to trap an individual member of the Storm and give yourself an advantage is maybe your only hope.
would be the right call. If Oceans flops in ever, I imagine that's what's going to happen. It looks like the river's already going down.
There you go. You're right. It's Oceans in the middle, but look how little damage has found its way to Oceans because it's all into Delnyyy. And now the Sages have done enough on the first fight. Dame goes back in, dashes back to the rest of his team. It's a clean 1 pick for the Athenian Sages. It's worked perfectly. Needed to see some life from the Sages on defense. Trapped out Delnyyy, separated out the fight, and have repelled the initial attack.
Yeah, there's no way you commit to that first Phoenix Siege. It's just, you don't have enough damage and your tanks are not tanky enough. The call is always, you know, Oceans needs to step up, try and go for a burp, bait out that River's Rebuke, flop out. But it seemed like Delnyyy felt confident enough, almost full build, to tank up that Phoenix. Was not the call, and the Sages were able to repel the first bit of that Fire Giant siege. They don't even have it on Ocean, so it's only on Dame, Joshy, and Zen for the time being. In another 30 seconds, that buff will fall off. So we're looking at another Fire Giant dance for sure in the next coming minute 30. But I would say the Storm probably recognized now that they need to put a little bit more respect into the River's Rebuke. It's going to split up the fight. It's going to make sure that you can't help out your tanks if they're on the other side. And despite a good dunk in from Dame, he did not want to commit after the initial just flop of the damage. He immediately darted out. He did not want to commit without his tanks there. So I'm thinking next time, assuming the Xibalba Storm are able to grab this Fire Giant, they're going to play that a bit slower.
I think it's a strong but easy assumption, Trelly, that the Xibalba Storm favored to pick up the next FG. It's more about buying time for the Sages. You've all hit level 20, but you are heavily behind in itemization. Tier 2s, upgraded starters, Joshy, incredibly wealthy itemization-wise here. Is not only upgraded the starter, but has the tier 2 on what I'm going to assume is a soul gem. And Jangaru feeling pretty far behind. Not only nothing in that 6th slot, but still no upgraded starter item there. The Sages, a bit aggressive in their positioning, but I suppose you can safely walk forward knowing that the Xibalba Storm in all likelihood are setting up over on the right side of the map. Looks like, though the Fire Giant about to spawn, backs channeled, canceled, one of each to try to defend the left side bird. Nobody from the Sages sticks around. But was that buying time for your team to rotate back to right? That's the question. No, it was just making life difficult for the Xibalba Storm. This Fire Giant, maybe the most pivotal of the year so far for either of these two teams, has crumbled. And you're going to have all of the uptime in the world to try to break open the base of the Sages.
And a right side Trebuchet as well for the Storm, so that right side tier 2 should be dropping with relative ease. I don't think the team even needs to group up towards that side of the map if they don't want to. Because they have a Trebuchet, I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to push this right bird first. Usually, it's that left side Phoenix you want to look at, but you got so much extra help to defend this Trebuchet. The last siege didn't go so well because both tanks wanted to dive in. You only have to dive in if you're able to protect this guy. So to keep the Trebuchet alive and just stand and wait for River's Rebuke, that's got to be the call. Dame is split in mid, could always ult over if he needs to. Shortfuse is going to have to try and keep Dame at bay, though, to make sure he doesn't join the rest of the fight.
Good poke from InMyZen. So Dame 206, Shortfuse not fully 6-slotted. Bit of defensive itemization down the stretch. You favoring this Ratatoskr in the 1v1 over in mid. You think Dame has it handled, or does Shortfuse have a bit of extra sneaky power?
As long as Dame has beats, should always be winning that 1v1. Shortfuse just doesn't have the damage enough to try and win that fight handedly, especially with that CC going through. That's why we're not seeing any brawling. That Phoenix is just dropping. Finally, the ult goes down.
Oh, Dame puts the stun onto Shortfuse. The Fear No Evil buys time, but that's just about it. Suddenly, this tension building between the Storm and the Sages at this pivotal moment in the year for both of these teams. The Sages would love to continue their Season 9. The Xibalba Storm confident, but taking a deep breath prior to making their way to the SWC group stages. But suddenly, Delnyyy has flipped the switch. The Athenian Sages being jumped on. Dame with the first, but Shortfuse able to answer back. The carry still healthy. It's Joshy, full HP on the Merlin that has now got all the damage for the Xibalba Storm. And we have seen Zen step forward before, and it's rarely a good thing. This time, no different. Now Joshy with 2, And the Xibalba Storm are able to crack the right side Phoenix.
Yeah, the teleport in from Delnyyy, though. It doesn't look like they care about the Phoenix anymore. Delnyyy charging into the Titan room. When's that Fear No Evil up? It's coming up soon.
And it's got to hit, and it's got to be good from Shortfuse. It gets the actives off Zen, but Joshy turns around the damage. And the Xibalba Storm begin their Titan burn. And it's a Titan burn that will send them to the Smite World Championship group stage, your 5th seed from NA. Headed to January.
What a fantastic tournament played by the Xibalba Storm. I would have said, looking at this from day number 1, after they get 2-0 by the Tanuki, no way they're going to be able to qualify. After they make a little bit of a comeback, looks cleaner, but being here in 2nd seed, that's incredible. I think they have all shown an incredible amount of growth and God pool diversity.
Agreed.
There's a lot of picks that I'm looking at from the Storm that you cannot let these guys have.
This is a Storm team that found a tournament identity by the end of this weekend. Did not start off like a team you're expecting to go to the Smite World Championship group stage. And then looked by the beginning of today and now the end of today, a team that's not going to be denied. And they've got their eyes on potential upsets just a couple weeks from now. That is our last competitive Smite for the calendar year of 2022. And that's it for Trelly and I. And the desk will send us home.
Thanks so much, Dave. And we do have it, Mifflin. All 8 teams that are going to be going to the SWC group stages. And this one, an important one for the Storm going into it, important for the Sages going into it. But one team, the Sages here, into their Season 9. The other side of this, the Storm move forward in Mifflin. It is in a very commanding fashion that they were able to win this game.
Yeah, Game 3, not in question. Not at any point. I mean, it was an early lead into early objectives in a team fight after team fight that came up Storm. Game 2, maybe a bit iffy, but
yeah.
I would argue in the similar position, the Storm ended the game much faster, much more concise in how they approached this one. Impressed across the board. I think Trelly does a great job highlighting it. Just a couple of picks that the Storm should not be allowed to play consistently, and they got it a few too many times throughout this week.
Yeah.
Love the aggression, love the target selection. In particular, I think Dame deserves every bit of credit that he could get. A lot of the fights really did roll through him. How many times was it the rat going up to the Yggdrasil tree, hopping through the branches, and then dunking down on multiple targets to really start things off? I'd argue the majority of the engagements in the even state off the back of that, but it was only to make way for the late game dive of his frontliners. Once Delnyyy and Oceans were playing together, it just felt like the Athenian Sages couldn't get the follow-up they needed off of their own initiation. Shortfuse would go in with his ultimate and say, Jangaru, where are you at? And Jangaru is just huffing and puffing in the back line, fighting for his life while Bacchus slams him with a meat stick the entire time. It just wasn't easy. Or Delnyyy would descend into madness and make sure that Renjaru couldn't follow up on anything either. I love the Xibalba Storm in this set. They clearly came with a game plan, and they execute on it perfectly.
Playing the way that we know they are capable of. Like Shelly said, much in the same vein, after that first day, did not expect to see the Storm have this kind of performance. A massive turnaround for them in their play. Whether that was figuring out the gods that they knew they could be good with or just finding their stride. They made it work this weekend. They get to go forward to the SWC group stages. And with a good look at the very end as well, joining the Hounds from this region into the group stages. Very, very fun sets of play. And again, to echo yourself and Trelly, not a lot of gods that you want to let through against this team. And they have too many options going forward for them. So yeah, no pressure's on. Oh, and Mifflin, it's going to be such a fun group stage. Warriors, Scarabs, Storm, and Mambo. That is, and admittedly, the Storm, even after a strong performance, a very tall order still, given what we have seen out of the Warriors, the Scarabs, and Hex Mambo so far this year. So going into Group B for those group stages is going to be a challenge for them.
Yeah, I wonder. Group B, obviously incredibly contentious, but the version of Mambo that we have seen throughout the year, this speedy blitzkrieg team, I think works very well in the EU SCC because that is a group and region that is not used to that speed of play. NA a bit more used to it, so although this is the 5th seed coming out of NA up against the 1st seed out of EU, it feels like maybe just based off matchup and matchup experience that they could bring that matchup to Hex Mambo. But it's hard to say, right? We don't often get to see these teams match against each other.
Well, they have a little bit of time to figure it out, right, Dave? Saying it accurately, the last competitive Smite today of 2022. We won't be starting up again until the beginning of January in 2023. You can see here the path that they took. The Storm falling to the Hounds, as did everyone. But then being able to beat the Wardens 2-0 earlier today, beat the Sages 2-1 just now, and earn their spot with the Hounds as the top 2 in North America. And for some of you might be wondering, you hear me and Mifflin talking, and you're like, what? Hex Mambo, scared? What are you guys talking about? Well, we'll show you how the grand scheme of this works, this road to Worlds. You saw the Phase 3 playoffs a couple weeks ago. We took the Leviathans, the Kings, the Bolts, and the Dragons, 4 teams that went immediately to Worlds. The next week, we got Hex Mambo, the Highland Ravens. This week, we've got the Hounds, and now the Storm. Those 4 teams are joining the 4 SPL teams, the Titans, the Valkyries, the Warriors, and the Scarabs, January 5th through 8th. As the last chance qualifier to make it to the World Championship, the 8 teams will enter. 4 teams will move ahead. It's going to be two groups
Yep.
of 4 playing against each other. The Titans, the Valkyries, the Hounds, and the Ravens, as well as the Warriors, the Scarabs, the Storm, and Hex Mambo. 2 teams from each group will advance, and of course for the winners of the Phase 3 playoffs, the Kings, they get to choose any of those 4 that make it out. Second place, Leviathans, they get to choose any of the 3 left. Third place, Dragons, get to choose anybody that's left after that, and then the Bolts will be receiving whoever is left after that. So, changing up, and literally a week before, not fully certain of what the SWC bracket will be, and that's January 13th through 15th. They're the 18 single elimination tournament live from Arlington, Texas. I'm excited to see what that one is, Mifflin, but it's that week before right now that we have to focus on, because it's the next thing that is going to be coming up. We're going on a brief break over holidays. Then January 5th for the SWC group stage will be a big deal. Tartarus Titans will be in the very first match taking on the Highland Ravens. It's 3 best-of-3s on that Thursday, 3 best-of-3s on that Friday. Then the qualifier matches, by the way, best-of-5s, 2 of them, 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday. Titans v Ravens, Warriors v Mambo, Valkyries v Hounds. Then Friday we'll start off with Scarabs v Storm. Those are the matchups that we know. We can look at the brackets and how it is all going to shake out. Titans, Ravens, there you go. Valkyries, Hounds. Benny Q's tweet, Mifflin.
That tweet
comes true.
Every single event the Hounds have made it into which they could play up against the SPL, the Valhalla Valkyries have gate-kept them at every single opportunity. I don't even believe dropping an individual map. The Valkyries have gone undefeated up against the Hounds. The Hounds clearly coming with a chip on their shoulder, have got to prove that they can play up to the SPL's level, and to do so, they start with the Valks.
You'll have to look at this. Match 7, Match 9, those best-of-5s qualifiers for Worlds. So, winning maybe the best route for you, obviously. We'll see who can make it out of Group A. Group B, though, as we talked about, Warriors versus Hex Mambo, and the Scarabs taking on the Storm. Now, this one, Mifflin, I'm really excited for, because the Scarabs, still a fresh look as we left Phase 3. Hex Mambo, as you said, something that we are very excited to see how they can maybe try to tackle some of the NA style of play, teams like you said that are more used to that fast pace. But I'm going to keep my eyes. I think that first match, match number 4, will be starting Friday at 11 a.m. that day. Scarabs taking on the Storm. Got my eye caught on it just to see what kind of Scarabs we're going to get after the changes they went through at the end of Phase 3.
Yeah, and they've had some time now to work together and iron out some of the bumps in their play style and their strategy going forward. So I am excited to see that matchup as well. But speaking holistically, having had the opportunities to talk to some of the teams going into this event, they essentially told me, look, the SCC is not used to the pace of game of the SPL. We have got an inherent advantage of, if you're talking about up against Europe, playing in North America where all the best players in the world currently reside. The ranked scene, the practice scene over here, incredibly powerful.
True.
It just means that you've got a little bit easier of a time leveling up your own individual gameplay. And B, It's the expediency of play, the speed of play. Just feels like these EU teams and these SCC teams at times are not quite used to that just blitzkrieg, run it down, every objective, fight me now style. The SPL might be looking to upset them in very quick ways. Just make it happen and make it happen in the first 10.
Well, the good news is they're going to be here playing on land January 5th, but for now, we're going to take a little bit of a break.
2 weeks.
And two, yes, a
2.5 weeks.
A 2.5 week break from
I won't be back.
competitive. So hopefully everyone tuning in, you enjoy your holidays, enjoy the time off. We'll see you here in 2023.